Chapter 1326. The death of 3 great cultivators was a serious blow to the Xian sect. The only pity was that Wang Shiqing did not stay in the Xian sect's encampment. Otherwise, Lu Ping would not mind killing a possible hidden danger for Zhenling. After Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu collected the spiritual treasures and storage magic tools of the 2 great cultivators of the Xian sect, they did not participate in the looting of the Xian sect's encampment. Qinghu and the others only took the storage magic tools of the Xian sect cultivators they had killed. They did not compete with the Tianxian sect cultivators for the secret vaults that the Xian sect had set up to store cultivation resources and the spirit veins that were used to support the formations in the base. After killing the 3 great cultivators of the Xian sect, Lu Ping, Qing Li Laozu, and Wu Liu Laozu began to encircle the Azura, who had been exhausted from the continuous battles. In the end, the Azura was killed by Qing Li Laozu. The remaining Mara's team had originally suffered heavy casualties in the battle with the Xian sect cultivators. Since they knew that the direction was Xiang Palace, they only needed to take a shortcut to catch up. They did not stay in the encampment for long. They went all the way west. At this time, Mara's army had been driven northwest by the 4 pure yang cultivators. Since they knew that the direction was Xiang Palace, they only needed to take a shortcut to catch up. Although Lu Ping had learned from Qing Li Laozu that this was the result of the 13 pure yang cultivators' discussion, Lu Ping still had some malicious speculation about whether this was Xiao Baiyu's secret plot against Xiang Palace. After all, if Xiang Palace was not prepared, it was likely that the 2 converged forces of Mara's army would break through the line of defense. The northwest defense of Central Earth controlled by Xiang Palace would instantly fall into Mara's hands. Whether it was the hatred between Xiang Palace and Skyrend, or the humiliation Xiao Baiyu brought to Xiang Palace in the past, it did not seem strange if Xiao Baiyu really had such a plan. However, for Lu Ping, he was more willing to stand on the side of Xiang Palace. Regardless of the righteous cause of fighting against Mara, at least judging from the friendship between Lu Ping, Xie Tianyang, and Su Jin, Lu Ping would not hesitate to stand on the side of Xiang Palace. It was a pity that Lu Ping didn't know the whole story until now, so he didn't have the time to ask Xie Tianyang and the others for confirmation. But thinking about it, Ziyang Palace and the Crystal Palace were known as the twin palaces of the 6 Holy Lands. They should have a well-thought-out plan. As a matter of fact, Lu Ping's worries were groundless. Before Lu Ping and the others arrived at Xiang Palace's station, a huge battle scene unfolded in front of Lu Ping and the others. Tens of thousands of Mara's army and human cultivators were engaged in a life-and-death battle within a radius of dozens of miles. Although this scale was not comparable to the Phantom Island battle that Lu Ping participated in the East Sea back then, the sea was different from land. Battles on land were always more tragic. With the help of the 11 Asuras, the 5 Scythians had temporarily resisted the attacks of the 7 pure yang experts. However, everyone could tell that it was only a matter of time before the 5 Scythians were defeated. Watching this grand and tragic scene from miles away, other than Lu Ping, who had once participated in the illusionary Spirit Islands array, the other cultivators, even people like Qing Li Patriarch, who had seen many things, were shocked by the scene before them. After a long time, Qing Li Laozu finally came back to his senses. He heaved a sigh of relief and said, "Xiang Palace's counterattack has succeeded." Xiang Palace and Tianxian sect seemed to have a tacit understanding to launch a counterattack against Mara's army at the same time. Then, they drove the Mara's army to gather again. At this time, not only Lu Ping, but the others had also guessed something. Sang Yu asked, "They want to drive the 2 Mara armies south after gathering. I believe there are 4 or 5 pure yang cultivators gathered at Skyward Pavilion and launched a counterattack. If I'm not wrong, they will drive the Mara army north." Qing Li Laozu did not hide anything and said, "That's right." Lu Ping looked like he had expected it and continued, "They will drive the Mara army from the north and south to the 9 mystical tower. Then, they will work together to defeat the Mara army that is besieging the 9 mystical tower. However, aren't they afraid that Mara will be driven to desperation and really break through the 9 mystical tower?" Qing Li Laozu smiled and shook his head. Mara's army has been besieging the 9 mystical tower for 10 years without being able to break through. How can it be broken now? Moreover, If the Nine Mystical Tower is really broken through by Mara's army, then it's best that they get rid of the title of Middle-earth's sacred land as soon as possible. Forefather Qing Li paused and then said, "These holy lands and sects have hidden themselves far more deeply than you imagine. They will not fall so easily. However, they will not be able to escape after being so heavily injured in this battle. Why are you hiding it?" Yin Tianchu suddenly appeared behind Lu Ping and asked. This was clearly the final battle that the 13 pure young cultivators had planned for a long time. However, the Heavenly Shen sect, Purple Sun Palace, and Skyward Pavilion had launched a counterattack against Mara's army at the same time. They did not know that the various sects had already surrounded the Nine Mystical Tower. Even Zhenling, who had Lin Yu Laozu, had only received news that the Heavenly Shen sect was about to launch a counterattack against Mara's army. Lin Yu Laozu had not revealed the true purpose of this battle to them. Qing Li Laozu shrugged and said, "Besides the 13 pure young cultivators, the 2 sacred lands of Purple Sun Palace and Wuxing School, as well as the Yuan family, the Heavenly Shen sect, the Spirit Beast Taming sect, and Skyrend, are in the south. Naturally, the Crystal Palace, the Skyward Pavilion, and the Lingyun Valley are in addition to the 4 large sects of the South Sea, the Heavenly Moon sect, and a few other large sects of the Central Plains. However, even among these sects, only the late Dharma adepts know about this. The disciples of these sects are merely following orders." Sang Yu nodded at Lu Ping, proving that he himself did not know about this news. The Spirit Beast Taming sect had Feng Lu Laozu participating in this battle, so they naturally knew about this plan. However, Sang Yu clearly did not have the right to know about this. He had only followed Feng Lu Laozu to the Heavenly Shen sect and then brought the other 2 Empyrean walkers to meet up with Qing Li Laozu and the others. As for the other sects, it's enough to just guard their bases. After all, once this battle is won, Mara will definitely escape in all directions. At this time, the various sects' bases around the Nine Mystical Tower will be the last line of defense to resist and eliminate Mara who has fled. Therefore, there's no need to inform them. Lu Ping recalled that before Lin Yu Laozu left Zhenling, he had instructed him to inform Zhenling to guard their bases. Initially, Lu Ping had thought that Lin Yu Laozu was worried that Zhenling would encounter other troubles without a pure young cultivator after he left. Now, it seemed that Lin Yu Laozu had a deeper meaning. Lu Ping smiled bitterly and said, "In this battle, even if 8th Sister Zhu is eliminated, there might be other pure young cultivators who will appear. In fact, victory is in our hands. At this time, these sects from the sacred lands have abandoned the weaker sects and launched the decisive battle alone. Naturally, they can take the opportunity to monopolize all the battle credits and divide the quota to enter the 7th Patriarch's Taoist platform as well as the cultivation resources in the 3 mystical places. After the battle, they can even use the righteous reputation of a sacred land's large sects to protect the weaker sects as a reason." What a good plan. Wu Liu Laozu smiled and did not deny it, but said, "At least with your battle credits, no one can take away the quota to enter the 7th Patriarch's Taoist platform. After this battle, you will be famous all over the world. Moreover, in the current situation, there is no sect among the medium-sized sects that can challenge the position of Zhenling. Your sect can still get a part of the cultivation resources in the 3 mystical places." Lu Ping turned around and looked at Qing Hu, Qing Lang, Lu Qina, and Tian Feng, whose injuries had become more and more serious during the battle. He looked at Lu Hai and said, "The 5 of you go back to the station immediately and tell Master Uncle Tianshan everything here. In this last battle, you can't hold on with your current strength and state. Go back to the station and tell the sect to get ready. At the same time, recuperate and restore your strength to prevent the attack of Mara's defeated army." They looked a little hesitant, obviously unwilling to leave like this, but Lu Ping's face darkened and he said, "Do you want to be a burden at that time? Go." Qing Li Laozu nodded. This last battle was not a child's play. It was more of a battle between the high-level Mara and the high-level human cultivators to decide the outcome. Cultivators who were not strong enough or injured were indeed not suitable to participate in this kind of melee. On the contrary, once the Mara army was defeated and fled, it was afraid that there would be more low-level Mara. At this time, The stations of the various sects needed more manpower to intercept and destroy these fleeing Mara as much as possible. Qingli Laozu nodded at Fifth Willow Laozu. Fifth Willow Laozu turned around and sent a few seriously injured cultivators from his sect back to the station. They were preparing to deal with the possible attack from the defeated Mara army. Up in the sky, the 7 treasured fans surrounded a heavenly demon from all directions. Finally, Laozu found an opportunity. The 7 treasures fanned out at the same time and half of the sky was enveloped by a rainbow-colored light. The heavenly demon trapped within the light was seemingly blown away layer by layer. Out of the 5 heavenly demons, 1 had fallen. Although the remaining 4 heavenly demons still had the support of 8 or 9 asuras, they no longer had the courage to fight against the pure young humans. As the remaining 4 heavenly demons fled, the entire Mara army below, under the pursuit of the cultivators from the various sects, sped up their retreat towards the 9 Mysteries Tower. Qingli Laozu turned to the others and said, "It is time for us to take action as well. If we don't, the others will snatch away all our battle point." Chapter 1327. The final battle of the 9 Profound Tower had lasted for 2 days under the pincer attack of the human cultivators from both inside and outside. During the course of the battle, Lu Ping, Yin Tianchu, Liu Qianyuan, and Qing, who had gradually separated from the forefather Qing Li and the others as they moved deeper and deeper into the Mo Luo army. However, they were still able to maintain a certain level of contact and support each other. Because of Lu Ping's control, the 4 of them didn't go too deep into Mara's army. They also tried to avoid the high-tier Mara's attacks, and they only stayed within 100 feet of the Mara's army. There were basically no asuras within this distance. With the 4 of them working together, even 3 to 5 Jade Devils would not be a match for the 4 of them. Lu Ping and the others were chasing after 3 or 4 Jade Mara. The Mara in front of the 4 of them were easily killed. But at that moment, Lu Ping's will moved, and he said, "Hurry up. Someone else is coming for the points." Following that, the 4 Jade Devils in front of them began to slow down. A series of explosions could be heard in front of them. Clearly, someone had stopped the 4 Jade Devils from the other side. Lu Ping swung his long sword, and 2 green dragons flew into the crowd of Mara. They quickly caught up to 2 of the Jade Shura. Just as Lu Ping cast the Azure Jiaoxi disturbance sword skill, Yin Tianchu, who was already in sync with Lu Ping, made his move. Just as one of the Jade Shura separated to block the Jade Shura's attack, Yin Tianchu's Supreme Mystery Thorn followed the Azure Jiao's tail and pierced the Jade Shura's chest. Then, Yin Tianchu swung his short dagger and the Jade Shura's head fell from the sky. On the other side, Cyan Fox was clearly too slow. As Yin Tianchu was making use of the opportunity to kill off one of the Jade Shura, the Jade Shura had managed to evade the attack. The thieving heaven axe came swinging down, but it only managed to cut off one of the Jade Shura's arms. Were it not for Liu Qianyuan's timely assistance, the Jade Shura would have fallen into the hands of the cultivators who were intercepting the Jade Shura. While Lu Ping was helping Green Fox and Yin Tianchu kill the Mara, a scream came from the other side. A Jade Shura had been killed by a cultivator. Of the 4 Mara, only 1 was left. It was badly injured, and it was trying to run back to the Mara army. Lu Ping grunted. The Sword of True Spirit unleashed 3 dragons, and they went after the Jade Mara from 3 different directions. At the same time, a sea of fire rose up in front of Lu Ping, and it spread toward the Jade Shura. The attacks from both sides hit the Jade Shura at the same time. The Jade Shura screamed, and its body was burned to nothing by the sea of fire. Lu Ping waved his hand, and Mo Li flew back. The other sea of fire was extinguished. Lu Ping laughed and said, "Is that Qin Shijun from the Crystal Palace, Brother Qin?" Not far away, a laugh came from the Mara group. "It really is Brother Lu. We haven't seen each other for decades, and Brother Lu's training has become even more profound." There was a loud crash, and the dozens of Mara in front of Lu Ping exploded in all directions. A path opened up in front of Lu Ping, and a figure walked slowly behind the dozens of Mara. Lu Ping glanced behind the figure, and when he looked at Qin Shijun, who was walking over, his eyes also flashed. He said, "Isn't Brother Qin the same? You're already at the peak of the mid-Dharma stage." Back then, Brother Qin was the first of our generation to cross the threshold of the mid-Dharma stage, and you made many jealous and envious of you. Could it be that Brother Qin is going to become the first person to step into the late Dharma stage once again? Having his level of training seen through by Lu Ping, Qin Shijun's eyes flashed with caution, but his expression was one of disbelief. He said, "Brother Lu, you must be joking. There are many hidden dragons and crouching tigers in the Central Plains, and there are many who surpass me. Not to mention others, just Brother Lu's level of training alone makes you invincible among our generation of practitioners. My level of training is not even worth mentioning." The two of them exchanged a few words with fake smiles and left. They turned around and reached for the imaging stones at their waists. Lu Ping opened the imaging stone and saw that it still showed 347 points. It was obvious that he had not succeeded in killing the Jade Demon. Lu Ping cursed under his breath. On the other side, Qin Shijun frowned when he saw the record on the imaging stone. The Jade Demon's body had already been burned into nothingness by his starlight, but the imaging stone did not give him the credit. In other words, the Jade Demon had actually died by Lu Ping's hands. This made Qin Shijun very unhappy. Qing, who looked at Qin Shijun's back, who had been led into Mara's group, and asked, "Is this person the chief heir of the Crystal Palace?" "That's right, it's him." Qing, who looked at Lu Ping in surprise. For a moment, she seemed to see a hint of fear in Lu Ping's eyes. Even though it was only for a moment, Qing, who had never seen anyone who could surprise Lu Ping among practitioners of the same level. Did he come alone? If there's someone else, why is he hiding? Lu Ping sneered and said, "Because there's a cultivator who doesn't seem willing to meet me. Although I don't know his true identity, I can roughly guess who he is. The Jade Demon's credit was taken by someone else just like that." Lu Ping was actually quite concerned about this. A Jade Demon was worth 15 points no matter what. Lu Ping was more or less concerned that it had been taken by someone else first. Actually, Mara's credit wasn't taken by him. The other three immediately stared at Liu Qianyuan. Liu Qianyuan's hair stood on end under their stares, and he immediately took the initiative to say, "Earth-shattering chop, a great natal magic that I've just mastered." Liu Qianyuan spread out his hands and explained to Lu Ping, "I saw that the Jade Demon was trying to escape, so I tried to use the earth-shattering chop. I didn't expect it to get ahead of you two and fatally wound the Jade Demon from below." After that, Lu Ping's and Qin Shijun's Sea of Fire attacked at the same time, and before anyone could examine the wound, the Jade Demon was burned to ashes. Lu Ping laughed and said, "Wonderful, as long as Qin Shijun didn't take it." Qing Hu and the others looked at Liu Qianyuan with envy. He was only at the early Dharma stage, but killing a Jade Demon was already a huge bonus for his battle points. This meant that Liu Qianyuan had earned 30 battle points for this attack, and his ranking among the early Dharma adepts would definitely rise. It was a pity that Liu Qianyuan could only see his own battle points and not his ranking. Chapter 1328. After Qin Shijun turned around and left, although he was slightly unhappy that he had not managed to kill the Jade Demon from Lu Ping, it was not only the Jade Demon that made his expression turn gloomy. Without the high-ranking Mara blocking his way, Qin Shijun easily passed through the Mara army. The big and small Mara who tried to stop him did not even get close to him before they were engulfed by the starry light. Then, they turned into a ball of flame with a shrill roar and rushed towards the group of Mara, causing even more chaos. "Big brother, who was there just now?" a mid-Dharma Crystal Palace disciple asked when he saw that Qin Shijun had returned. Qin Shijun looked at the remaining 4 Crystal Palace disciples and said gloomily, "It was Lu Tianping. It's him." This mid-Dharma adept exclaimed. If Lu Ping was present at this time, he would recognize the person in front of him as Cheng Shizhuang, the direct disciple of the Crystal Palace, whom he had met on Frost Island. "So you're saying that they did escape the Mara's pincer attack? How did they do it?" Cheng Shizhuang asked unwillingly. "Looks like that's the case," Qin Shijun said coldly. "There were 9 of them at the beginning, and now there are only 4 left. If I'm not wrong, they must have discovered the movements of the 2 Devil Luo forces and escaped in advance. I'm afraid the way they escaped was to rush into the Devil Luo army. The other 5 must have died when they rushed into the formation." "Only 5 died, They got off lightly. Another mid-Dharma adept from the Crystal Palace said unwillingly, "This Junling's people are really something. They actually dared to charge into the Mara army and fought back from the dead, and they actually succeeded. Big brother, do you think Lu Tianping knows that we were the ones who leaked their whereabouts and colluded with Wuxing School and the Yuan family to plot against them?" The speaker was an early Dharma adept from the Crystal Palace. He was one of the 2 early Dharma adepts among the remaining 5 people from the Crystal Palace. The other person was none other than Ouyang Wei-jian. However, Ouyang Wei-jian had been quietly listening to the conversation of the others. Qin Shijun hesitated for a moment, then shook his head and said, "I don't think so, but it's hard to say in the future. After all, the people from Wuxing School and the Yuan family were all involved in that plot. It's hard to guarantee that they won't leak the information." Speaking of these 2 sects, a flash of anger flashed across Cheng Shuzhuang's face as he said, "The people from Wuxing School are really useless. They didn't even know that Junling's people had escaped, and they were so proud of themselves that they drove the 2 groups of Mara troops that had merged together to charge towards us. The people from the Yuan family are too damn lucky to have actually escaped so early, just in time to avoid the reinforcements from Mara who had pounced on us from behind. Otherwise, out of the 10 of us, we wouldn't have lost half of our men so quickly." A look of pain flashed across Qin Shijun's face. Back then, the people from Wuxing School had not managed to chase Junling's people away. Instead, they had brought a group of Mara's people and collided with the people from Crystal Palace, who had been prepared to intercept them in advance. The people from the Yuan family had even found an excuse to escape in advance. With no other choice, the Crystal Palace and Wuxing School had no choice but to join forces and prepare to take down the 2 groups of Mara's people who had gathered together. No matter what, these were still battle points. Since Junling's people had not been able to plot against them, they could only take some interest from Mara's people. However, to their surprise, at this time, from behind the people from Crystal Palace, a group of Mara's reinforcements suddenly rushed up to reinforce the Qianxian sect's battlefield. The leader was a skyscraping devil, which had scared the souls of the people from Crystal Palace and the cultivators from Wuxing School. Fortunately, the skyscraping devil did not take these people seriously and did not directly attack them. However, the Mara's reinforcements, which rushed over like a flood, still involved the cultivators from Crystal Palace. Although Qin Shijun saw that the situation was not good and led the others to break out, 5 people were still trapped in the siege of the Mara's army and never came out. Qin Shijun seized the opportunity quickly, but the 10 cultivators from Wuxing School were not so lucky. The attack of Mara's army directly killed 7 of them. It was said that even the newly appointed Juzi of Earth was killed. Only Juzi of Water was able to break out of the siege of Mara's army with 2 people. At this time, Ouyang Wei-jian suddenly asked, "Senior brother, did the Yuan family suddenly leave because they had already known that Mara's reinforcements would come from behind us?" Ouyang Wei-jian's sudden question stunned the other 4 cultivators from Crystal Palace. Qin Shijun couldn't help laughing and said, "How is that possible? Could it be that Yuan can predict the future?" Everyone roared with laughter, including Ouyang Wei-jian himself. Lu Ping naturally did not know that the people who originally wanted to plot against them had suffered a great loss. At this time, because Liu Qinyuan's strength had increased, Lu Ping and the others' strength had also increased. The 4 of them joined forces to wreak havoc in the Mara's army and became more and more skillful. However, under Lu Ping's control, they never went deep into the Mara's army. However, in the past 2 days, as the 13 pure young adepts and the sects that 11 of them belonged to suddenly joined forces and began to attack the 9 Shen Tower's Mara army from both the north and south, the cultivators from the various sects who were stationed on the periphery also began to feel that something was wrong. 2 days was enough time for them to send their own cultivators to participate in the final battle against the Mara army. More and more Dharma adepts from various sects joined forces, which also caused the high-level Mara near the periphery of the Mara army to die or be injured. This was also one of the reasons why Lu Ping and the others were able to kill as they pleased in the Mara army at this time. Junior brother Lu, the traces of the high-level Mara are getting fewer and fewer. If this goes on, I am afraid the speed at which we obtain battle merits will slow down. The four of them had already been close to 2 hours without encountering even a single bloodshorer. Liu Tianyuan was a little troubled as he asked, "Why don't we go deeper?" Lu Ping hesitated for a moment. At this time, more and more cultivators from various sects had appeared on the battlefield. In just half a day, Lu Ping and the others had already seen several groups of Dharma adepts charging deep into the Mara army. This made Lu Ping hesitate for a moment whether he should also charge deep into the Mara army. After all, many people had already taken the risk to enter. With so many Dharma adepts gathered together, the danger zone naturally could not be considered dangerous. At this time, Yin Tianchu suddenly returned and said, "Traces of the high-level Mara have been discovered 3 miles away, but this place is a little strange. Lu Ping's divine will might be able to observe the situation on the battlefield from outside the battlefield, but at this time, he had already killed his way into the Mara army. Even Lu Ping's divine will was inevitably affected and reduced by a lot. Moreover, in order to not attract the attention of some tyrannical existences, especially existences like the sky demons, Lu Ping had no choice but to exercise some restraint in this Mara army. However, after hearing Yin Tianchu's news, Lu Ping still tried his best to extend his divine will in the direction that Yin Tianchu had pointed out. However, very quickly, his divine will seemed to have encountered some kind of barrier. Lu Ping frowned. To be able to block his divine will, it must at least be a high-level Jade Demon Mara. However, this area that could block the probing of his divine will seemed to be a little too big. Jade demons were not capable of supporting such a large divine will barrier, and from the way Lu Ping saw it, it was not impossible for him to break this barrier. Lu Ping condensed his divine will into a thread and pierced through the divine will barrier. Immediately, Lu Ping felt a trace of hostility. Obviously, this divine will had been discovered by the existence that had set up the divine will barrier. However, just as Lu Ping condensed his divine will and pierced through the barrier, Lu Ping suddenly felt a sharp pain. It was as if something had seeped into Lu Ping's divine will like a moth flying into a flame the moment Lu Ping's divine will appeared. Lu Ping's expression changed, and he exclaimed, "The thought dissipation powder." Lu Ping immediately retracted his divine will. However, the sharp pain did not leave his divine will. Instead, it became more intense and spread. Lu Ping snorted coldly, and a jade-green flame suddenly spread along the divine will. A sizzling sound that only Lu Ping could hear was heard. The jade-green flame flashed and disappeared, and the sharp pain also disappeared from Lu Ping's divine will. Liu Tianyuan and the others had been staying in Central Plains for a long time. Naturally, they had heard of this unique medicine that came from the #1 alchemy family in Central Plains, the Lu family. In the past, cultivators who had been poisoned by the thought dissipation powder could only cut off their wrists and abandon the part of their divine will that was contaminated by the thought dissipation powder to prevent the poison from spreading. Although it would greatly affect the cultivator's divine will cultivation, they could not care so much in order to prevent their divine will cultivation from being completely destroyed. However, Lu Ping's jade phosphorus soulfire was the nemesis of this secret medicine. Before the medicinal power of the thought dissipation powder could spread in Lu Ping's divine will, it had been burned by the jade phosphorus soulfire. Lu family? I thought it was the soul-devouring black mist of devil cultivation. Yin Tianchu clearly knew about the #1 alchemy family in Central Plains and muttered to himself. The appearance of the Lu family in the vicinity at this time aroused Lu Ping's interest. Lu Ping had also obtained some thought dissipation powder in the past. He had also plotted against East Pole Laozu during the auction on Phantom Island. Lu Ping, on the other hand, was extremely interested in the thought-dissolving powder's recipe. After obtaining the thought-dissolving powder, he had tried to reverse engineer the spirit herbs needed to refine it. However, all these years, he still couldn't find a way. Should I take this opportunity to? Lu Ping hesitated for a moment. This time, Lu Ping and Junling had displayed their strength in Central Plains. However, Junling was only a medium-sized sect. No matter how strong they were, they could only follow the principle of if others do not offend me, I will not offend others. If he took the initiative to provoke the Lu family, it would be extremely wrong. However, before Lu Ping could find a decent excuse for himself, The person who had set up the divine will barrier that was extremely similar to the soul-devouring black mist had followed the aura of Lu Ping's divine will and chased after him. Chapter 1329. Lu Ping was still plotting to get the formula of the thought-dissolving powder from this Lu clan cultivator, but he didn't expect that Lu Ping's probing had angered the Lu clan cultivator who had set up the divine sense barrier. A divine sense equivalent to that of a grand cultivator surged out from the barrier and rushed towards Lu Ping and the others like a torrent bursting a dam. Lu Ping's expression changed and he said, "Be careful, it's not the Jade Devil, it's the Lu clan cultivator of the Central Plains." Everyone was on high alert. Yin Tianchu's figure blurred and was about to disappear from the air. Unexpectedly, Lu Ping accurately caught his figure and said, "It's very difficult to hide from the Lu clan cultivator's concealment technique. This person's divine sense attack has spread a lot of poison around the barrier." Yin Tianchu was startled and said, "You're poisoned?" Lu Ping smiled and shook his head. When Lu Ping invaded the barrier with his divine sense, he had unknowingly been contaminated with this invisible and colorless poison. However, this poison was not as harmful to the divine sense as the thought-dissolving powder. It was more like a kind of mark that entered the cultivator's divine sense, allowing the Lu clan cultivator to track and identify the existence of these people. However, when Lu Ping used the jade phosphorus soul fire to dispel the thought-dissolving powder's corrosion on the divine sense, he also dispelled the poison that had silently invaded the divine sense. At the same time, Lu Ping realized that he had fallen into another trap. Seeing the other party's divine sense attack rushing towards the four of them, although Lu Ping was not afraid, he was worried that the others could not block this strange divine sense attack. Therefore, Lu Ping shook the cloud sail in his hand and countless auspicious clouds rose around him, protecting the four of them. At the same time, he stretched out his right palm and a jade-green flame that could only be detected by divine sense burned in the air. He then flicked it outwards and the flame attached to the auspicious clouds and immediately expanded. In an instant, the entire auspicious clouds surrounding them were covered in light green flames. The great cultivator's divine sense attack rushed toward the four of them like a flood or a ferocious beast. However, when the green flames slowly rose from the surface of the cloud, the powerful divine sense attack suddenly stopped. Jade phosphorus soul fire? The thought transmitted from the divine sense was communicating with Lu Ping. He did not hide his surprise and even a hint of greed and joy. He said, "A few ignorant brats actually dared to provoke the old man. The old man will take this spiritual fire as compensation." Since this great cultivator from the Lu family had discovered the jade phosphorus soul fire, he naturally would not send his divine sense to be ignited by the other party. In a way, the jade phosphorus soul fire was somewhat similar to the thought-dissolving powder. However, the power of the jade phosphorus soul fire usually increased as the divine sense cultivation of the cultivator who refined it increased, while the thought-dissolving powder's damage to the divine sense was constant. In front of the jade phosphorus soul fire, the thought-dissolving powder was clearly restrained. The great cultivator from the Lu family who had withdrawn his divine sense did not make Lu Ping feel relaxed. Instead, his expression became even more solemn. This was because the moment the great cultivator withdrew his divine sense, Lu Ping could clearly sense that the great cultivator's divine sense cultivation was also extremely high. It was comparable to Lu Ping's. The moment the great cultivator gave up on attacking with his divine sense, the black fog that had shrouded the area 3 kilometers away suddenly expanded. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ping and the other three were completely enveloped by the black fog. Lu Ping's expression did not change as he continued to surround the four of them with his divine sense. After being tempered by the battle along the way, Qing Hu and Liu Tianyuan were no longer in awe when facing the great cultivator. Instead, they appeared to be much more at ease. The two of them were already prepared to fight the great cultivator. Of course, more importantly, they had a companion who had suppressed the great cultivator with absolute strength several times. As expected, the moment Lu Ping was surrounded by the black fog, not only did he not show any signs of seriousness, but he instead chuckled as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Following that, he let out a series of ha-ha sounds and his laughter even became continuous. This caused Yin Tianchu and the others to be somewhat confused. They all looked at each other and at Lu Ping, only to see Lu Ping draw a semicircle in front of him. A spatial passageway slowly began to form, and at the end of the spatial passageway, there seemed to be a flickering wave of light. In the end, Qing, who couldn't help but ask, "Brother Lu, what's going on?" Qing, who wasn't the only one who couldn't keep her cool. The great cultivator from the Lu family who had surrounded Lu Ping and the others with the black fog also felt that victory was in his grasp. "Brat, why are you laughing when you're about to die?" Lu Ping looked at the black mist around them, which was getting thicker and thicker. When the black mist came into contact with the jade phosphorus soul fire, a sizzling sound was produced. Because the jade phosphorus soul fire could only be detected by divine sense, the black mist and the cloud formed by the hanging cloud sails were maintained at a distance of 3 inches. The strange sizzling sound came from this 3-inch gap between the black mist and the cloud sails. "Brat, it's best if you retract your jade phosphorus soul fire." Although the old man's soul-devouring poison smoke is an imitation of the soul-devouring poison smoke of devil cultivators, its essence isn't formed by remembrance. Your jade phosphorus soul fire will at most consume some of the poison smoke. On the contrary, the old man's poison smoke is actually restraining your spirit fire. If you don't want to completely destroy your spirit fire, it's best if you retract it. Perhaps the old man will let you live. When Lu Ping heard this, he laughed involuntarily and said, "This senior's words are not contradictory. In senior's words, we're just going to die anyway. What's the difference between retracting the jade phosphorus soul fire and not retracting it?" A cold snort came from the depths of the black fog. The spatial door opened in front of Lu Ping became more and more stable, but he didn't seem to care at all. He said, "Senior wants to steal my jade phosphorus soul fire, right?" As he spoke, Lu Ping actually retracted the jade phosphorus soul fire. Lu Ping had already noticed that while the jade phosphorus soul fire was burning the poison smoke bit by bit, the jade phosphorus soul fire's power was also slowly declining under the onslaught of the black fog. The Lu clan's Lao Zu hiding in the black fog was right. The Lu clan's great cultivator, who had originally been seen through by Lu Ping, didn't think that Lu Ping would actually do this, but he still said, "Very well, if you can offer this jade phosphorus soul fire, the old man may consider letting you go." However, just when the jade phosphorus soul fire suddenly disappeared on the surface of the auspicious cloud, the surrounding black fog suddenly tightened, completely pressing down on the auspicious cloud formed by the cloud sail. The kai-kai sound of the black fog being corroded was even more intense than the previous jade phosphorus soul fire. Lu Ping took a playful look at the depths of the black fog. The cyan light seemed to be able to pierce through the poisonous fog and clearly see the Lu clan's great cultivator hiding in the depths of the poisonous fog. He said, "You really deserve to be a member of the Lu clan. The poison contained in this black fog must be extremely powerful." Once again, the great cultivator's complacent laughter came from the black fog, and he couldn't help but show off, "Boy, it's good that you understand. The old man is the Lu clan's chief great poison refiner. Our Lu clan's alchemy has been inherited from Taoist Gui for a long time, but the art of making poison and alchemy are just two sides of a piece of paper. It can be said that every high-level alchemist can easily become an excellent poison refiner, and the old man is the Lu clan's best poison refiner. If you don't want to die without an intact corpse, you'd better hand over the jade phosphorus soul fire." Oh, it turns out to be a poison refiner. I didn't expect that the dignified number 1 alchemy family in the central region would have an expert specializing in poison. This is really a pleasant surprise. A pleasant surprise. The black fog churned, and the Lu clan's great cultivator finally noticed that Lu Ping's tone had always been inappropriate. He said coldly, "Boy, what do you mean?" Lu Ping chuckled, and the portal in front of him was suddenly pushed out of the auspicious cloud by Lu Ping's palm. Then, like moths flying into a flame, the poisonous fog all over the sky gathered into the portal. Chapter 1330. Lu Ping indeed had many ways to deal with poisons. Whether it was the dark prison poisonous fire in Lu Ping's hand or the myriad poison meteorite original power he cultivated, both could make Lu Ping immune to all poisons. Even without these two ways, as an alchemy grandmaster, Lu Ping had already mastered the recipes of countless detoxification pills. However, compared to the pool of golden liquid in the bluestone pool Lu Ping opened up in the House of Gold, all of these paled in comparison. Ever since Lu Ping killed Chuya Laozu, this pool of myriad poison liquid from the Seven Stars Cave Heaven dared not show up in front of others. Not only because this pool of golden liquid had the magical effect of gathering all poisons and condensing them into myriad wonder dew, but more importantly, before Chuya Laozu died, he named this pool of liquid, which Lu Ping thought was myriad poison liquid, as the myriad poison source liquid. This was a small part of the essence of the myriad poison pill that Taoist Gui personally concocted and poisoned Jiao Daoren. Through the green soul fire, Lu Ping's divine sense only needed to make a slight contact with the black poisonous mist of this great cultivator from the Lu family, and he immediately knew that this black mist was extraordinary. However, the more Lu Ping realized how extraordinary this black mist was, the happier he was. Because to Lu Ping, this poison magic, which was extremely tricky for others, was no different from giving him a chance to condense heavenly treasures, especially those extremely powerful poison magic that Lu Ping had never seen before. When Lu Ping opened up the space tunnel in the House of Gold and directly led to the pool of myriad poison source liquid, the black poisonous mist, which had been roaring towards Lu Ping and the others like huge waves, gathered towards the space tunnel opened up by Lu Ping like moths darting into a flame. The furious roar of the great cultivator of Lu clan came from the dark mist. How could this be? How could the old man's divine ability go out of control? Brat, who are you? What method did you use? Lu Ping naturally ignored it. As he spread his hands, the spatial passageway also slowly expanded. The speed at which the poisonous fog gathered towards the spatial passageway suddenly increased. This poison technique was actually so easily destroyed by a spatial passageway opened by Lu Ping. Brat, who the hell are you? As the black mist was devoured, the area enveloped by the black mist shrank. Yin Tianchu and the others could even vaguely see the figure of the Lu clan great cultivator who was hiding in the black mist. Additionally, after the poison mist was broken, the great cultivator from the Lu family was no longer as calm as he was earlier. Rather, there was a hint of panic in his voice. For a great cultivator to fall into a state of panic after his poison mist was broken was unexpected. It wasn't that this great cultivator didn't have other means, and Lu Ping wouldn't be able to break his poison technique in a short period of time. When he discovered that his divine ability was starting to go out of control after his opponent opened the spatial passageway, this great cultivator had already launched a counterattack using other means. However, this great cultivator seemed to be extremely lacking in other means of combat apart from this poison technique. Moreover, the power of his attacks wasn't very strong. Lu Ping was able to calmly break the spatial passageway while maintaining it. Even Yin Tianchu had to withstand one or two attacks from this great cultivator. Seeing this, Lu Ping was also eager to give it a try. Seeing the remaining black mist suddenly condense in mid-air, a huge ball of black mist suddenly burst out with a few wisps of black flames. Without thinking, Qing Hu swung the thieving divine axe in her hand at the fireball. Seeing this, Lu Ping shouted, "Don't attack." However, it was already too late. The black fireball exploded with the thieving divine axe, and countless black flames rained down like a torrential rain. The auspicious clouds that had previously been able to withstand the erosion of the black mist were instantly pierced through by the black flames that rained down like raindrops. Qing Hu tried to use her protective magic treasure to block it, but she could only block a portion of the flames that filled the sky. Even so, the magic treasure was about to be destroyed under the corrosion of the black flames. Qing Hu gritted her teeth and had no choice but to raise her protective aura. She saw that there was a basin-sized black flame floating above her head. Qing Hu was shocked at first, thinking that this was the black rain of fire condensing above her head. However, the black flame suddenly extended downwards, and a fiery light fell down to protect Qing Hu. Only then did Qing Hu realize that this flame was used by Lu Ping to protect her. Countless black rain of fire smashed into the light curtain hanging down from the flame, and instantly melted away. The only trace left behind was a slight ripple on the light curtain. Black prison venom fire. Black prison venom fire that has been upgraded to the extreme. Who are you people? Without the cover of the black mist, An old man with a half-foot-long grey beard stared at the black prison venom fire burning above Qing, whose head from several dozen feet away. The light under his feet flickered, as if he wanted to rush up and snatch it at any time. However, in the face of Lu Ping's extraordinary restraining methods, the old man eventually suppressed the desire in his heart. Lu Ping had no time to pay attention to him at this time, because at this time, a thick layer of black clouds had condensed above the myriad poisoned source liquid in the House of Gold. Sparse golden raindrops fell into the bluestone pond. When the raindrops fell and the black clouds dispersed, the myriad poisoned source liquid in the bluestone pond that Lu Ping had expanded was overflowing once again. The myriad wonder dew at the bottom of the pond was like an excited fish, and Lu Ping's divine sense could even sense that the myriad wonder dew had actually grown slightly in this short period of time. Lu Ping could not help but feel a burst of excitement in his heart. The condensation of the myriad wonder dew was undoubtedly a long-term process, but at this time, Lu Ping's divine sense could actually sense the process of its growth. Although the extent of the growth was extremely small, it was enough to show that the poisonous mist absorbed by the myriad poison source liquid was large enough, and the quality was high enough. In Lu Ping's opinion, the myriad poison source liquid that Lu Ping had absorbed from the Lu family's cultivator's poison technique was almost the same as what he had gained from killing Chu Yi Laozu. Seeing that the myriad poison source liquid was gradually calming down, Lu Ping shifted his attention away from the House of Gold and looked at the Lu family's great cultivator, who was several tens of feet away. Just as Lu Ping raised his eyes to look at the great cultivator, Lu Ping's expression suddenly changed, and he said, "Not good, he wants to escape." Liu Tianyuan and Qing, who looked at each other. This Lu family's great cultivator had been right in front of them all along, and they did not see any signs of him escaping. However, the two of them did not doubt Lu Ping's words at all. The two of them rushed out of the cloud sails one after another, and charged towards the great cultivator from two different directions. Although the two of them knew that they did not have the strength to stop the great cultivator on their own, the great cultivator clearly had the intention of killing them in the previous battle. It was only because it was too easy for Lu Ping to break through the great cultivator's poison technique that the two of them hesitated for a moment. However, Lu Ping's roar clearly told the two of them that he would not rest until this Lu family's great cultivator was dead. Yin Tianchu also seemed to hesitate for a moment, but he quickly concealed himself in mid-air. He also did not see any signs of the great cultivator escaping. A five-elements sword qi instantly pierced through the Lu family's great cultivator's chest. However, Yin Tianchu, who revealed himself in the void, did not look happy at all. Instead, he frowned deeply. It was too easy, the person in front of him was just a substitute. Not only him, even Liu Tianyuan and Qing who were trying to outflank the Lu family's great cultivator from two different directions, stopped in midair for a moment. They stared blankly at the Lu family's great cultivator, who was slowly disappearing after Yin Tianchu easily pierced through his body. Moreover, this great cultivator, whose body was gradually fading, could still leave a mocking expression on his face. What a strange escape technique. He escaped. A great cultivator actually escaped. When and how he escaped, Yin Tianchu and the others had no idea. At this moment, even if they wanted to chase after him, they would be at a loss. Whoosh! A roar rang out in midair like a flood bursting through a dam. The three looked in the direction of the sound and found that Lu Ping had also attacked. However, the direction of his attack was not that phantom, but the void behind them. At this time, what shot out of Lu Ping's eyes was not cyan light, but two blood-red shadows. The spiritual treasure was cut in two, one opened and the other closed. The void 300 feet away was suddenly cut, and the Lu family's great cultivator, who looked exactly like the phantom, fell out of the void with a face full of fear. Looking at the pure young spiritual treasure in Lu Ping's hand, his lips moved, and he said, "Lu Tianping of the North Sea. The spiritual treasure is actually in your hands. You killed Chu Yi of the East Sea and stole the Qingming River." Lu Ping did not attack this great cultivator again, nor was he surprised that this person recognized him. Instead, he gave an irrelevant answer, "Your Excellency can actually use the divine will projection outside, impressive." Seeing that Lu Ping did not pay attention to him, the great cultivator still asked, The old man's god-destroying, bone-corroding poisonous fog is one of the most poisonous magical powers in the world. How did you break it? Lu Ping sneered. You want to know too much. The great cultivator took a deep breath, as if he wanted to say something. Unexpectedly, his face suddenly turned pale, and a ring-shaped line of blood flowed out from his waist. The great cultivator looked down, and a wry smile appeared on his face. Then, his vitality left his body. His body above the waist had already been cut in half by Lu Ping's pure yang spiritual treasure. He had only managed to hang on to the last of his vitality with a secret technique, trying to get some secrets from Lu Ping. That was why he had survived until now. Unexpectedly, Lu Ping was not moved at all. This great cultivator of the Lu family died with everlasting regret. Lu Ping did not wait for the great cultivator's body to fall to the ground. With a hook of his hand, the storage artifact at his waist fell into Lu Ping's hand. He then made a hand seal with his fingers, and the dark prison poisonous fire that was floating above the green fox's head wrapped around the corpse. A panicked scream could be heard coming from within the poisonous fire. The flames of the dark prison poisonous fire suddenly flared up and burned even more fiercely. One could vaguely see a hole in the chest of the corpse. A black tiger, about a foot long, was unable to break through the black flames and gradually melted in the poisonous fire. Chapter 1331. Yin Tianchu and the others had witnessed Lu Ping's tyrannical strength several times, such as defeating a great cultivator and killing an Azura. However, when Lu Ping really killed a great cultivator, the shock it brought was far greater than when Lu Ping killed an Azura. Lu Ping looked at the three people who were in a daze for a moment and said with a smile, "What's wrong? Do you think it's too easy to kill a great cultivator?" Qinghu shook her head and said, "You can even kill an Azura. What's so difficult about killing a great cultivator? It's just that the gap between before and after is too big. You seemed to be very nervous before, but then you became extremely confident." Lu Ping laughed involuntarily and said, "This person's poison magical ability is extremely powerful. If I didn't have a special method to restrain him, it would not be easy to win this battle. However, even I didn't expect that this great cultivator from the Lu family seemed to be lacking in other fighting methods apart from the poison magical ability and the divine sense projection secret skill. That's why you guys felt like it was a strong start but weak finish." Liu Tianyuan nodded and said, "That's right. Perhaps it's because he was born in an alchemy family. It's said that alchemy masters' cultivation strength is on the lower side among cultivators of the same level, but they can always master one or two powerful life-saving secret skills. This person must be the same." After Liu Tianyuan said that, he saw that Qinghu and Yin Tianchu's expressions were a little strange, so he quickly added, "Of course, I'm only talking about ordinary alchemy masters. Junior brother Lu is naturally an exception." At this moment, Yin Tianchu asked, "Will there be trouble?" Lu Ping nodded and said, "We lost a great cultivator who is proficient in poison magical ability. It's not justifiable for the Lu family to not pursue this matter. However, I've already checked just now and there's no one else nearby. Unless there's a pure young cultivator spying nearby, the Lu family will only think that this person died in the Mara army." As they spoke, the four of them had already left the area. The continuous battles had caused them to plunder a large amount of battle merit points, but at the same time, their true essence was also greatly depleted. Especially after Lu Ping used the pure yang spirit treasure again, they needed to retreat and recover their true essence. At this moment, Qinghu thought of something and asked, "Strange, what was the Lu family's great cultivator doing hiding there? Could it be to kill Mara and rob him of battle merit points? But there are only a few Jade Mara in the periphery at most. Most high-level Mara and Mara are blood Mara. How much can they help him with battle merit points? His cultivating a magical ability and refining a type of poison." Lu Ping tossed a jade slip in his hand and said with slight excitement, "His poison magical ability, Thought Melting Powder, has a similar characteristic. It can cause extremely strong corrosion to a cultivator's divine sense. One of the sources of this corrosion is the soul-devouring crystal of demonic cultivators. One of the main ingredients for refining thought melting powder is also the soul-devouring crystal. Liu Qinyuan's eyes lit up and said, "You've obtained his cultivation method?" Lu Ping smiled proudly and said, "Not only did I get the cultivation method of his poison technique, but I also got the method to refine the thought-dissolving powder. In addition, there are many pill recipes and a large number of precious spirit herbs. The Lu family is indeed worthy of being called the #1 alchemy family. Thought-melting powder is a secret of the Lu family. Since this person has the pill recipe for thought-melting powder with him, it shows that his status in the Lu family is very high." Qing Hu pursed her lips and said, "That goes without saying. Although the Lu family is known as the #1 alchemy family in the Central Plains, it is still a medium-sized sect after all. A great cultivator's status in the family is naturally very high. Maybe you've killed such a great cultivator. If the Lu family finds out, they will definitely fight Junling to the death. Don't blame me for not reminding you. The Lu family's status in the Central Plains is not low, and their killing methods are extremely evil and strange. You'd better not let them know that you've killed their great cultivator and obtained the refining method for thought-melting powder." Lu Ping shook his head and said, "You've underestimated the aristocratic clans. The Lu clan has been able to stand tall in the Central Plains for tens of thousands of years, and it's not just because of their alchemy skills. Although the Lu clan is a mid-sized clan, it's impossible for them to only have 1 or 2 great cultivators. But you're right, the Lu clan won't just let this matter rest after losing a great cultivator." Lu Ping rummaged through the great cultivator's storage magic tool, and the smile on his face became even wider. Clearly, the collection inside was rich enough to move a person like Lu Ping. He casually tossed 3 jade bottles to the 3 of them and said, "This is the thought-dissolving powder. Take it to protect yourselves. Although this person's poison magic is powerful, it's not very effective against Mara, so he only dares to hunt those low-level Mara in the periphery of Mara's army, making up for quality with quantity. Otherwise, if we find some jade demons in the inner layer to kill, his poison magic will probably be even more powerful, and it won't be easy to defeat him then." The 4 of them found a secluded place to recover their spiritual essence, and observed the situation on the battlefield from the periphery. At such a distance, even Lu Ping's divine sense could not cover a corner of the battlefield, so he could only observe with his eyes. Qing Hu watched for a while before saying, "Now, the human cultivators have the absolute upper hand, and more than 10 pure young cultivators have almost all the heavenly demons in Mara's army entangled, and even the Asuras have been greatly suppressed, but Mara's army still doesn't seem to be in a mess. This is very different from the style of Mara's army, so why is it?" Liu Qinyuan also said, "Legend has it that Mara's army has always been bloodthirsty, but before this, Mara's army knew to retreat when the situation was not good, and now they are fighting to the death, as if they are killing for the sake of killing." Although the crowd was puzzled, they didn't think too much about it. However, at that moment, the faces of Lu Ping and the others changed. Even on the massive Demon Luo battlefield, the vigorous battle had fallen into a momentary silence. At that moment, be it the human cultivators or the Demon Luo army, it was as though their minds had been seized. Everyone's attention, including the Demon Luo army, was drawn to the huge change taking place in the center of the battlefield. The center of the battlefield was where the 9 Mysteries Tower was located, and it was also the area where the battle on the Mara battlefield was the most intense. Lu Ping's divine will could clearly sense that the spiritual energy in the air was rapidly flowing away within the range of his divine will. And the spiritual energy was gathering in no other place but the center of the Mara battlefield, where the 9 Mysteries Tower was located. The gathering of spiritual energy wasn't just limited to where Lu Ping and the others were. It covered the entire battlefield of the Mo Luo War and even further away. It was as if there was a powerful existence in the 9 mystical tower that could command the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. In that instant, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the 9 mystical towers' territory was under its control. Everyone felt a pressure that came from the depths of their hearts. This pressure did not originate from any particular existence, but from the world itself. At this moment, everyone felt as if they were not facing the humans or Mara, but the divine might of the world itself. Qing Hu's face turned pale under the pressure of the divine might of the world. She exclaimed, Which powerful existence is this? To be able to summon such a divine might of heaven and earth. Lu Ping remained silent. He cast his eye technique to the maximum and saw the surrounding spiritual energy rapidly converging toward the 9 mystical tower. Even the trees and grasses within the radius of 1,000 miles were blown to the ground by the surging spiritual energy. Lu Ping watched as the spiritual energy flowed toward the 9 mystical tower, stirring up gusts of wind and causing all the trees and grasses within 1,000 miles to fall to the ground. The world energy that had gathered in the sky above the 9 profound tower was so dense that it had condensed into multicolored auspicious clouds. Then, these clouds began to regroup. In just an instant, these clouds had formed into 7 different colored feather-shaped auspicious clouds. From afar, it looked like 7 huge feathers had formed into a fan. The speed at which the spiritual energy gathered grew faster and faster, and the rainbow feather fan in the sky became clearer. The auspicious clouds in the sky became thinner and thinner until they disappeared. The spiritual energy that had gathered didn't need to condense into colorful auspicious clouds anymore. Instead, it was absorbed by the feather fan in an orderly manner. The only thing that remained in the sky was the rainbow feather fan. Qing Hu exclaimed, What is this?" Not only Qing Hu, but Yin Tianchu and Liu Tianyuan were also dumbfounded. Lu Ping's expression suddenly changed. He thought of the wine cauldron of heaven and earth at the foot of Luoxin Mountain. Since Wuxing School could preserve the wine cauldron of heaven and earth, one of the 6 great divine weapons of heaven and earth, why didn't the 9 Mysteries Tower, a holy land that had been passed down since the beginning of the world, not have a sect treasure that could be compared to the wine cauldron? Among the legendary pure yang treasures in the cultivation world, there was only one treasure that could be compared to the wine cauldron of heaven and earth. Furthermore, it was in the shape of a feather fan, one of the 7th patriarch of heaven and earth, the Luan Daoist's heaven-opening divine weapon, the 7 feather fan, which was refined from the natal feathers of 7 beings with the bloodline of Luan. That's right, the 9 Mysteries Tower's sect treasure that could be compared to the wine cauldron of Wuxing School was the 7 feather fan, which was also a heaven-opening divine weapon, in the hands of the Luan Daoist. However, when Lu Ping saw the wine cauldron of heaven and earth, although the heaven-opening divine weapon had shown Lu Ping an unprecedented power, it seemed to be far inferior to the great changes caused by the 7 feather fan in front of him. Could it be that there was a difference between the 2 heaven-opening divine weapons? At this time, the flow of spiritual qi between heaven and earth suddenly stopped. It seemed that the huge feather fan floating in mid-air no longer needed to gather spiritual qi, which meant that it had finished its final preparations. Lu Ping's expression changed. Ignoring the huge pressure brought by the vision of heaven and earth, he jumped up and said, let's go, let's get out of here." Yin Tianchu and the others did not know what was going on, but they had absolute trust in Lu Ping. Hearing this, they tried their best to overcome the pressure that filled the world and followed behind Lu Ping. Whether it was Lin Yu Laozu or the Longhuai ancestor, they had hinted vaguely to Lu Ping that there was an existence that was higher than pure yang cultivators in this world. Since the 9 Mysteries Tower could use the 7 feather fan to trigger such a vast vision of heaven and earth that far surpassed the cauldron of heaven and earth that the Earth Spirit Sun had triggered, then the identity of the existence controlling the 7 feather fan was self-evident. Chapter 1332. The reason why Lu Ping wanted to escape was because the 4 of them were currently facing the face of the 7-feathered fan. If the 7-feathered fan were to come crashing down, even though the 4 of them were already tens of miles away from the center of the battlefield, Lu Ping could not be sure that the power of the 7-feathered fan would not reach them. After all, it was highly possible that the 7-feathered fan was being used by someone who had surpassed a pure yang adept. Green Fox followed closely behind Lu Ping. In the end, she could not help but ask, "Brother Lu, what exactly is this fan formed by the heaven spirit qi?" Without turning his head, Lu Ping replied, "Other than the heaven spirit qi, what else could it be?" "The heaven spirit qi?" Azure Fox wasn't the only one. The other 2 exclaimed as well. Azure Fox said, "How is this possible? Heaven-splitting artifacts actually exist, and they can be used by people other than the 7 sky-splitting ancestors?" The sword of the true spirit in Lu Ping's core space had already been stimulated by the appearance of the seven-feathered fan. Lu Ping had already further confirmed that the seven-feathered fan was indeed the seven-feathered fan. At this time, half of Lu Ping's attention was on the sword of the true spirit. Mo Li, hearing Green Fox's words, Lu Ping replied without turning his head, "How can the heaven spirit Qi not exist? Who said that the heaven spirit Qi can only be used by someone other than the seventh patriarch?" Green Fox and the others no longer questioned the existence of the seven-feathered fan. However, the three of them continued to fly even faster behind Lu Ping. At this time, a loud voice rang out like a great bell. All cultivators below the late Dharma stage, retreat 50 miles away from the 9 mystical tower. Lu Ping's feet did not stop. When he looked back, there was suddenly a burst of light on the battlefield. At the same time, almost the same number of Mara flew up and entangled with each other, flying all the way to 50 miles away. At this time, Lu Ping and the others were already more than 70 li away from the 9 mystical tower. When Green Fox heard the earth-shattering sound, she was first startled, then overjoyed. 50 li should be the limit of the seven-feather fan's range, right? We don't have to go any further. Without turning his head, Lu Ping said, 50 miles is the distance that adepts below the late Dharma stage will not be killed by the seven-feathered fan. Qing, who let out a cry of surprise. Just because she hadn't been slapped to death didn't mean that she wouldn't be severely wounded. Furthermore, they were so close to the Demon Luo battlefield. If a severely wounded human cultivator were to fall into the hands of the Demon Luo army, the only fate awaiting them would be death. Qing, who sped up even further, but she still asked, "How did you know?" Lu Ping paused. His voice floated behind them as he said, "I've seen the treasured cauldron of heaven and earth before." The four of them retreated to a distance of 80 li before Lu Ping stopped and said, "This distance should be enough." When the four of them turned around, they saw that the towering seven-feather fan was now slowly descending towards the north. From afar, the seven-feather fan seemed to be descending at an extremely slow speed, but in reality, this was because the seven-feather fan, which was made of spiritual qi, was so huge that it seemed slow. In reality, the speed at which it was moving was extremely fast. Lu Ping patted his chest, and a white jade lotus bloomed beneath his feet. A lotus formation enveloped the four of them. Lu Ping said, "Everyone, protect your own bodies. Don't let this heaven-splitting divine weapon blow you away." As he spoke, the Linglong wine cauldron rose from the top of Lu Ping's head. Yin Tianchu and the others also used their own techniques. A huge block of ice formed beneath Yin Tianchu's feet, while Liu Qinyuan's body suddenly became several times heavier. As for Azure Fox, she used her inner yuan to transform into a furry fox tail that wrapped around herself. Just as the four of them finished their preparations, the seven-feather fan, which was dozens of li away, had already fallen to the ground. Under the wide-opened eyes of Azure Fox and the others, the moment the seven-feather fan fell to the ground, a wild wave formed by Mara suddenly rose from the ground. However, before these Mara feather fan could fall to the ground, it had already been blown into ashes in mid-air. At the same time, the moment the spiritual qi storm surged, countless Mara feather fan and a few human cultivators had already frantically tried to escape. However, it was clearly too late. The huge wave of Mara feather fan continued to surge, and its range of effect was growing further and further. At the same time, it was also getting closer and closer to Lu Ping and the others. However, countless Mara feather fan, as well as the human cultivators who hadn't had the time or even the warning from the previous voice, were still in mid-air when they were blown away by the rainbow spiritual qi storm. At the same time, the human cultivators who had heard the voice and fled 50 li away could not help but curse loudly when they saw the immense power of the seven-feather fan. However, they did not dare to slow down and continued to flee. Many of the cultivators had even continued to flee from the area where Lu Ping and the others were standing. Even 80 li was not enough for them to feel safe. The huge wave of Mara feather fan continued to roll in the direction of Lu Ping and the others. This storm was so powerful that the closer it got to the four of them, the more Lu Ping and the others could feel that they were extremely small and insignificant in the face of this great power. It was to the extent that Azure Fox, who was a mid-Dharma adept, was already trembling in fear when faced with this raging spiritual chi storm. It was not just Azure Fox. Even Liu Qianyuan and Yin Tianchu were obviously shocked speechless by the power of the heavens and the earth. Brother Liu, will the spiritual chi storm caused by the 7-feather fan really not hurt us? I don't think so. Lu Ping was not confident either. However, it was too late to run now. It was better for them to use their own powers to defend themselves against this spiritual chi storm. At the same time, they could also pray that the memory fragments that they had obtained from the flying Laozu's pure young soul would not be mistaken. The spiritual chi storm had already spread from the 9 mystical tower to 30 li away, but the Mara army that had been sent flying had already been reduced to ashes in mid-air. When it was 40 li away, Lu Ping's eyes lit up. He could already clearly see that the Mara army that had been sent flying had only been torn to pieces by the spiritual chi storm. At least, it was not as simple as being reduced to ashes. Finally, when the spiritual chi storm caused by the 7-feather fan had reached a distance of 25 li away, Mara's chest had been crushed by the immense pressure of the spiritual chi storm. Apart from that, his body was still mostly intact. However, Lu Ping could still see a few human cultivators among the Mara army that had been sent flying, coughing up mouthfuls of blood. At least half of them had died on the spot. The remaining few were also severely injured. Before they could even land on the ground, they had already been killed by the surviving Mara army. The spiritual chi storm had spread for 60 li away. It was now only 20 li away from Lu Ping and the others. More and more cultivators were escaping from the 4 of them. At the same time, there were also many Mara fleeing. However, any Mara who passed by the 4 of them, regardless of whether or not they could be used to increase their battle merits, was killed by the 4 of them. When the storm was only 10 li away from Lu Ping and the others, not only Lu Ping, but Yin Tianchu and the others also gradually relaxed. At this time, the power of the storm was still very strong. There were still many Dharma adepts who had been blown away by the storm. However, it was clear that the majority of the people, including the surviving Mara, who had been sucked into the storm, would be able to keep their lives. At most, they would suffer light injuries. However, at this time, there was still a large group of Mara that had escaped from the 7-feather fan's attack range. With a stomp of his foot, Lu Ping shouted, "Rise!" The lotus array formation beneath Lu Ping's feet suddenly glowed with a bluish-purple light. A huge white jade lotus condensed into a spiritual energy silhouette that firmly enveloped the 4 of them. No matter how the spiritual energy storm from the 7-feather fan shook the white jade lotus, the lotus array formation still stood firmly in the spiritual energy storm, unwavering. At the same time, although Lu Ping and the others had the protection of the lotus array, they were still affected by the spiritual chi storm. The 4 of them each used their own methods to stabilize themselves. Besides Qing Hu and Liu Qianyuan, who were struggling to resist the spiritual chi storm, the spiritual chi storm no longer posed any threat to Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu. Seizing the opportunity, Lu Ping turned the thin water ever-flowing sword into the seeping water sword art, forming a huge net of sword beams several hundred feet wide around him. All the Mara that were swept by the spiritual chi storm within this area were shredded to pieces by the spiritual chi storm. The great mystery thorn in Yin Tianchu's hand had long since disappeared. After Lu Ping taught him the invisible sword art, Yin Tianchu's attainment in this sword art was even higher than Lu Ping's. Due to the spiritual chi storm, Yin Tianchu could not see the great mystery thorn at all. However, when 30 to 40 Mara that were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws passed by Yin Tianchu, they quickly fell silent and melted away under the spiritual chi storm. Clearly, they were already dead. Qing Hu and Liu Qianyuan were also in a position where many Mara had been killed. Obviously, they were not as skillful as Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu, but they still took the risk and killed more than 10 Mara. The raging spiritual chi storm raged for the time it took to drink a cup of tea before it slowly subsided. The huge net of sword beams in front of Lu Ping had killed countless Mara. Although most of them were small Mara, there were also some high-level Mara. At least, Lu Ping himself noticed that several Jade Mara that had been seriously injured by the spiritual chi storm were captured and killed by the huge net of sword beams. When Lu Ping took off the imaging stone from his waist and opened it, the 434 points on it left Lu Ping speechless. On the other side, Yin Tianchu saw Lu Ping's actions and also took out his imaging stone to take a look. The number of points displayed on it also surprised him. Although Liu Qianyuan and Qing Hu had also gained something, their gains were clearly incomparable to those of Lu Ping and Qing Hu. Following Qing Hu's cry of surprise, the four of them looked at the scene of the spiritual chi storm that had been triggered by the seven-feathered fan. They were stunned. "It's really clean," Liu Qianyuan smacked his lips and said. They could clearly see that the protective shield of the Nine Mystical House was still in operation, and from the protective shield of the Nine Mystical House to the north, the sky was so clean that not even a single cloud could be seen. The ground was completely flat, and the trees and grass had all been swept away. Even a few small mounds had disappeared, leaving only a bare, flat, and loose ground. It was only when they were 50 kilometers away from the protective shield of the Nine Shen Tower that they could see Dharma adepts and high-level Mo Luo, who had survived the spiritual chi storm but had clearly sustained serious injuries, that they had survived. As they got further away from the Nine Shen Tower, the power of the spiritual chi storm became weaker, and the number of practitioners increased. Most of them were human practitioners who had run 50 kilometers away because of the warning they had received earlier. It did not take long before a violent battle broke out once more. The human cultivators were hunting down the surviving demonic Luos. However, as most of the human cultivators had escaped the seven feather fan's area of effect, the human cultivators' strength far surpassed the surviving demonic Luos. Due to that, the human cultivators were able to easily defeat the surviving demonic Luos. The huge seven-feathered fan above the Nine Mystical House had not disappeared, but it had clearly dimmed significantly. At this time, Lu Ping and the others could clearly feel that the spiritual chi storm that had been fanned earlier was slowly returning to the slightly dimmed fan above the Nine Mystical House. However, because the spiritual chi storm that had been triggered by the seven-feathered fan was too strong, it would take some time for the seven-feathered fan to return to its previous state. It was clear that once the seven-feathered fan returned to its previous state, it would once again unleash this world-shattering power on the Mara army that had surrounded the Nine Mystical House. Lu Ping sighed softly and said, "Let's go. This time, the Nine Mystical House's siege has been completely resolved. There's no point in us staying here anymore." Qing Hu asked in confusion, since the Nine Mystical House has the heaven-splitting divine weapon, and there's a possibility that the person who can control the heaven-splitting divine weapon is even stronger than a pure young practitioner, why did they wait for more than 10 years to resolve the Nine Mystical House's predicament? Lu Ping shook his head and smiled bitterly. How would I know? Perhaps they didn't have absolute confidence in winning, or perhaps they had to pay an unknown price to unleash this world-shattering power. Liu Tianyuan asked, "Junior brother Lu, what should we do now? Should we find another place to hunt down Mara and snatch our battle points?" Lu Ping shook his head. "No. Since the Nine Mystical House has revealed their heaven-splitting divine weapon, they must be confident in defeating the Mara army that has been besieging the Nine Mystical House for more than 10 years. When the time comes, the defeated Mara army will flee in all directions and will definitely pose a threat to the various factions that have been besieging Mara's army. We need to hurry back to the camp as soon as possible and help the sects defend against the fleeing Mara army." The four of them flew west, trying their best to rush back to the camp before Mara's army collapsed. However, just as the four of them passed by the Nine Mystical Mountain to the west of the Nine Mystical House, another accident happened to the Nine Mystical House, which was on the verge of victory. Chapter 1333. Lu Ping and Cyan Fox were very familiar with Nine Profound Mountain. Originally, this place was too close to Nine Profound Tower. Back when Mara's army besieged Nine Profound Tower, it had already been occupied by Mara's army. However, the joint attack from the world of cultivation had forced Mara's army to retreat. They had long since retreated from Nine Profound Mountain. In order to hurry back to their encampment, Lu Ping and the others planned to head west through Nine Profound Mountain. Doing so would save them a lot of time. Lu Ping had already discovered that the 7 feather fans' next move would be to the east. 9 Profound Mountain should not be affected by the heaven-splitting divine artifact. However, just as the 4 of them were approaching 9 Profound Mountain, something unexpected happened. A sky-shaking boom rang out from behind them. Coming to a halt, the 4 of them turned around to look. A massive hole had appeared on the surface of 9 Profound Tower's great array, and countless demonic sieves were swarming into the hole. Su. 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 The great defensive array that 9 Profound Tower had been defending for over a decade had been destroyed just as Mara's army was on the verge of utterly defeating them. Various types of light kept flashing out from the opening. Clearly, the cultivators from 9 Profound Tower were doing their best to block up the opening. However, the opening had appeared too suddenly. Due to that, the cultivators from 9 Profound Tower were simply caught off guard. They were incapable of stopping the invasion of the demon Luo army. How could this be? Cyan Fox was not the only one. The other 3 cultivators were also in utter disbelief. How could the great defensive array be destroyed so easily? As for Lu Ping, he stared intently at the edge of the hole. Something as black as ink was stuck to the surface of the hole. As someone who had experienced the war on Chengling Island, how could Lu Ping not know that it was the work of poison azura? However, the appearance of poisonous azura on Chengling Island was thought by most overseas cultivators to be due to the myriad poison firmament wall, but how did these poisonous asuras appear now? Could it be that Mara from East China Sea had come to Middle Mainland? Or was there another highly poisonous place like the myriad poison firmament wall somewhere in Middle Mainland? But why did all these accidents happen just as the battle was about to end? The 9 Profound Tower, which had already gained the upper hand, activated its heaven-splitting divine weapon, and Mara's army, which was on the verge of collapse, actually broke through the sect-protecting formation that the 9 Profound Tower had guarded for more than 10 years. Those thoughts flashed through Lu Ping's mind for only a split second. At that very moment, the 7-feathered fan, which was descending toward the east, had yet to gather enough spiritual energy to recover. Suddenly, a yellow cloud condensed in the sky. As it hovered above the 9 Profound Tower's great defensive array, the yellow cloud suddenly shrank. When the yellow cloud had completely shrunk and disappeared, a meteor, tens of zhong in size, pierced through the sky and smashed down, leaving a trail of flames in its wake. Another booming sound rang out. This time, the 4 of them witnessed the meteor explode the moment it made contact with the barrier. Although the meteor was blown to smithereens, a hole, tens of zhong in size, had appeared on the barrier. The instant the hole was opened, countless Mara soldiers surged into the hole. Immediately, they began fighting against the cultivators from the 9 Profound Tower who had rushed over to seal the hole. However, Lu Ping noticed that tens of poison azura had appeared from an unknown location within Mara's army. They quickly took control of the edge of the hole and the hole began expanding. When Lu Ping and the others saw the meteor descending from the sky, they were left dumbfounded. Those who could utilize a peerless secret technique like the heavenly meteor descent must have cultivated Earth-type magic techniques to the peak. In order to summon out a 10-zhong meteor, one must at least be at the pure yang stage. It was said that the reason why Earth Spirit Sun was ranked first amongst the 5 pure yang cultivators of Wuxing School was not only because of his defensive magic technique, which was known as the best defensive magic technique among cultivators at the same level as him. Most importantly, when Earth Spirit Sun had just advanced to the pure yang stage, he had utilized the heavenly meteor descent to summon out a 150 zhong meteor. In the end, the other 4 pure yang cultivators had to join forces and unleash their full power to barely block the meteor. And now, the meteor descending from the sky had a diameter of 20 to 30 zhong. Not even the Earth-type pure yang cultivators of Wuxing School could accomplish such a feat. The moment the second hole was opened, 2 beams of light suddenly rose up from within Mara's army. 2 beams of light, one yellow and one green, shot toward the hole. When Lu Ping sensed the powerful aura from the 2 beams of light, he exclaimed, "Existences that surpass heavenly demons and asuras. There really are existences that surpass heavenly demons and asuras in Mara's army." Lu Ping's exclamation confused Yin Tianchu and the others. However, Just as the two beams of light were about to rush into the two holes, two beams of light suddenly fell from the sky. One of them was a frosty sword light that slashed at the yellow beam of light, while the other one scattered the 7 feather fans and swept toward the green beam of light. These two magic techniques were naturally the work of Xiao Baiyu and 7 feather fans Laozu. They were trying to use their magic techniques to stop the two Mara, who had surpassed heavenly demons, from breaking into the 9 mystical towers' defense array. At the same time, the same two rays of light broke through the blockade of the demonic luos that were swarming in through the gaps, charging towards the two transcendent demonic luos. It was obvious that they were trying their best to stop them from charging into the 9 profound towers sect-protecting formation. However, the strength of these two transcendent Mara far exceeded everyone's expectations. 2 pure yang cultivators and 2 other pure yang cultivators unleashed their peerless magic techniques, but they were still unable to stop these two existences that had surpassed heavenly demons. Xiao Baiyu and 7 feather fans Laozu's magic techniques were instantly broken. The 2 pure yang cultivators, who were trying to delay the battle outside the 9 mystical tower, were once again forced back into the defense array by the 2 transcendent Mara. The 2 transcendent Mara followed them into the defense array. This time, the 9 mystical tower was really in trouble. 2 escape lights quickly fell from the sky. Xiao Baiyu and 7 fans, who were late, broke through the barrier of Devil Luo outside the gap of the formation with a solemn look on their faces, and rushed into the sect protection formation of 9 Shenlu Tower without hesitation. With these 2 pure yang cultivators taking the lead, the 7 feather fan, which had already condensed for the 3rd time, turned to the west. Without waiting for the cultivator controlling the 7 feather fan to warn them, all the cultivators within a 50-kilometer radius did not think about escaping. Instead, they rushed into the 9 mystical towers defense array from behind the Mara's army. Yin Tianchu suddenly asked, "Are we going back?" Lu Ping did not directly answer Yin Tianchu's question. Instead, he asked, "Say, Mara's army has broken through the 9 mystical towers defense array. What do you think the 9 mystical tower will be like now?" Qing Hu replied, "Is there even a need to ask? The number of Mara's army that has entered the 9 mystical tower is already in the thousands. Moreover, more and more are rushing in. The 9 mystical tower is probably in a mess right now. What if the other cultivators have also rushed into the 9 mystical tower?" Qing Hu replied, "Is there even a need to ask? Of course it's to assist the 9 profound towers cultivators in exterminating the demonic Luo army. The 9 profound tower has been besieged by the demonic Luo army for more than 10 years, and I'm sure they're exhausted by now. Not only did these 2 openings break through their defenses, but they've also opened up 2 openings in their persevering willpower. Without the timely intervention of external forces, I'm afraid it won't be easy for the 9 profound tower to survive this." Yin Tianchu harumphed coldly. A chance to profit from a burning house. Liu Tianyuan and Qing Hu were taken aback. That was indeed the case. The cultivators from the various sects and Mara's army had all rushed into the 9 mystical towers encampment to start a chaotic battle. Using the excuse of helping the 9 mystical tower kill Mara as an excuse, they would be able to take advantage of the chaos. This was the perfect opportunity. Most of the cultivators from the various sects who snuck into the 9 profound towers' residence had the same idea. At the very least, they had the same idea. 9 profound towers was one of the 6 great hololands of the world of cultivation. For most ordinary cultivators, the ornaments used by the hololands as decorations were probably extraordinary treasures. Liu Tianyuan asked tentatively, "Junior brother, are you saying that we should go in as well?" Liu Tianyuan was clearly hesitant. Qing Hu, on the other hand, was eager to join the fray. Yin Tianchu, on the other hand, had a cold expression on his face. It was impossible to tell what he was thinking. Lu Ping chuckled and said, "Enough people have entered. Even if we profit from a burning house, we might still be able to snatch a few treasures. If we do that, we will only incur the jealousy of others." Lu Ping's words confused Liu Tianyuan and the others. Judging from Lu Ping's expression, he was clearly planning to take advantage of the situation. But how could he do that without entering the encampment? Lu Ping clapped his hands and said, "Everyone, follow me. Cultivators from the various sects will enter the 9 Xian Pavilions territory. The 9 Xian Pavilions people aren't fools, so they must have already guarded the important areas of the sect. But what if we suddenly appear inside one of the important areas they're guarding?" Lu Ping's eyes lit up as he looked at the 7-feather fan. "Everyone, follow me. The 9 Xian Pavilions people are no fools." Qing Hu came to a sudden realization. She giggled and said, "The key is with me, I will lead the way." Although Liu Qianyuan and Yin Tianchu didn't quite understand what was going on, they watched Lu Ping and Qing Hu open a spatial door on a secluded valley in the 9 mystical mountain and enter the thieving heavens cave dwelling. They heard from Lu Ping about how they broke into the 9 mystical towers longevity grotto heaven and found it hard to believe. "Senior brother, by now, the 9 profound towers' defensive forces have likely been mobilized to guard the entrances to the important areas to prevent the cultivators from the other sects from taking advantage of the situation and to kill off the demon Luo who has broken into the sect's encampment. Additionally, the sect will likely not have many defensive forces left in the secret grotto worlds. This is a chance." Liu Tianyuan frowned and said, "Then what about the wooden Luon? They are your friends. If they are discovered by the 9 mystical tower, even if they don't expose our identities, they will lose their lives." Lu Ping smiled and said, "Senior brother, don't worry. I have already thought of this." Chapter 1334. The cultivators from the various sects who were besieging Mara's army were no fools. Witnessing the formidable power of the 7-feather fan and its attacks, which did not differentiate between friend and foe, it was inevitable for them to feel disgusted by the 9 profound towers' overbearing actions. Even though the owner of the 7-feather fan had used his great divine ability to inform the cultivators of the various sects to retreat to a distance of 25 kilometers before unleashing the heaven-splitting divine ability, the truth was that the distance of 25 kilometers was merely a distance away from being slapped to death by the 7-feather fan. Furthermore, the time interval between the notification was so short that many cultivators could only flee to a distance of 25 kilometers due to the harassment from the Devil Luo army. Although a distance of 25 kilometers was not enough to kill them, it was possible for them to be wounded by the 7-feather fan. If Mara, who was also able to flee 25 kilometers away from the 9 profound tower, were to survive, that would be a fatal moment. An existence surpassing the heavenly demon stage had suddenly appeared to break the defensive array on the west side of the 9 profound tower. After Mara's army began charging into the sect's encampment, the cultivator controlling the 7-feather fan was clearly in a hurry to destroy the Mara army on the west side to lessen the pressure on the 9 profound tower. Thus, he began fanning the 7-feather fan towards the west side of the 9 profound tower. As for the cultivators who were in the midst of fighting the Mara army and those who were fleeing from the Mara army in the north and the Mara army in the east, they did not hesitate to charge into the sect's encampment through the opening that Mara had created. With those cultivators taking the lead and Xiao Baiyu and the 7-feather fan Laozu taking the lead, a good number of cultivators followed them into the 9 profound tower's encampment. It would appear that the 9 profound tower was no longer facing just Mara's army. And yet, at this critical juncture, they could not do anything about it. All they could do was to swallow their pride. Outside the spatial passageway above the longevity sky grotto, Cyan Fox nodded at Lu Ping. Next, she swung her heaven-stealing divine axe at the vortex-like passageway. Lu Ping made use of the opportunity to jump into the vortex, disappearing from sight in the blink of an eye. Who dares barge into the 9 profound towers longevity grotto heaven? As soon as Lu Ping's feet touched the ground, a crisp sound rang out from the sky. A huge wooden luon swooped down from the sky. However, when it saw that the person who had appeared from the spatial passageway was Lu Ping, the wooden luon immediately restrained its power as it swooped down. "Hey, why is it you? Why are you here again?" Lu Ping looked up and smiled. "So, it's Senior Luon Qing." "Senior, Do you know what is happening outside the Longevity Sky Grotto Heaven? As they were chatting, Cyan Fox, Liu Tianyuan and Yin Tianchu entered the Longevity Sky Grotto through the spatial entrance. Cyan Fox, on the other hand, had been there once before. After entering, however, Liu Tianyuan and Yin Tianchu felt a little overwhelmed. The space within the Longevity Sky Grotto was so vast that not even the two largest spatial-type magic treasures of Junling, the True Spirit Sky Grotto and the Jade Cave Sky Grotto, could compare. After that, the two of them turned to look at the mid-Dharma stage Wood Luan beast cultivator who was conversing with Lu Ping. Did you guys come in while the Nine Shen Tower is defending against Mara? I've heard from the Nine Shen Tower cultivators that the Nine Shen Tower has been attacked by Mara, but I don't think the Nine Shen Tower cultivators care too much about Mara. I've also heard news a few days ago that the Nine Shen Tower's victory is just around the corner. Lu Ping smiled. That is indeed the case. However, have you noticed anything strange these past few days? Lu Ping's question caused Luan Qing to be taken aback. However, another voice sounded from behind him. There is indeed something strange going on. Brother Qing, have you seen anyone from the Nine Profound Pavilion patrolling the Grotto Heaven? Lu Ping turned to look. It was the other mid-Dharma stage Wood Luan beast cultivator, Luan Xiu, who had rushed over. Seeing Lu Ping and Luan Qing nod slightly, Luan Qing thought for a moment and said, I haven't. Luan Xiu nodded and said, I've noticed something strange these past few days. I just went to the Nine Shen Tower cultivators' quarters in the Longevity Sky Grotto and found that none of the cultivators stationed there have been seen. Not a single one. Luan Qing was shocked. Does that mean that the Nine Shen Tower is really in trouble? The two of them looked at Lu Ping. Lu Ping shrugged and said, the Nine Shen Tower's protective formation has been destroyed by Mara's army. I'm afraid that the entire Nine Shen Tower is now embroiled in a chaotic battle. Impossible. The two Wood Luan exclaimed in shock. The Nine Shen Tower is a sacred place in the world of cultivators. It has been passed down since the seventh patriarch split the heavens. Generations of cultivators who have achieved the divine spirit level have been guarding the sect. How could their protective formation have been destroyed? Although Lu Ping had long suspected that these sacred places had existences that surpassed the pure yang stage, he was still shocked when he heard the details of the Nine Shen Tower from the Wood Luan. Moreover, the number of cultivators who had achieved the divine spirit level in the Nine Shen Tower had never stopped. This was even more unbelievable. However, this was not the time for Lu Ping to ask about this news. Lu Ping briefly explained the process of how the protective formation of the Nine Shen Tower had been destroyed. Both of their faces were filled with shock and uncertainty. Luan Xiu composed himself and said, Lu Daoyu, what is your intention? Could it be that you want to snatch the Longevity Grotto Heaven? Without waiting for Lu Ping to reply, Luan Qing continued, if you fellows have such intentions, I advise you to give up. Even if the cultivators of the Nine Shen Tower are not in the Longevity Grotto Heaven, if you try to snatch it, you will be discovered by the Nine Shen Tower. The Longevity Grotto Heaven is one of the most important heritage sites of the Nine Shen Tower. Moreover, we have all been placed with a divine sense seal. Our lives are in the hands of the Nine Shen Tower. If you want to snatch the Longevity Grotto Heaven, you will have to kill all of us. Luan Xiu sighed and said, this is also the reason why the Nine Shen Tower can withdraw all the cultivators guarding the Longevity Grotto Heaven to defend against Mara's attack. In order to protect our lives, we have no choice but to stop anyone who tries to snatch the Longevity Grotto Heaven. Lu Xiaoyu, you fellows should just leave. We appreciate your kind intentions, but please forgive us for being powerless. Lu Ping laughed and said, who said we want to snatch the Longevity Grotto Heaven? This time, not only did Luan Qing and Luan Xiu heave a sigh of relief, even Yin Tianchu and the rest were surprised. But thinking about it, the moment they tried to snatch the Longevity Grotto Heaven, the cultivators of the Nine Shen Tower would definitely notice. Not to mention whether they could succeed, even if they succeeded, Junling did not have the strength to protect the Longevity Grotto Heaven. Then, you fellows came here to pluck the spiritual herbs in the Longevity Grotto Heaven? I'm afraid that won't work. If you fellows only pluck a few spiritual herbs, then it's fine. But if you fellows pluck a large number of spiritual herbs, the people of the Nine Shen Tower will definitely notice. At that time, we will be the ones in trouble. Moreover, the spatial passage opened by the thieving heaven Laozu might not be able to protect it. Lu Ping smiled and said, "What if I can stop the divine sense seal from activating?" "What?" Luan Xiu and Luan Qing were first startled, then overjoyed. Luan Xiu took a step forward and said seriously, "Lu Daoyu can dispel the divine sense seal?" Luan Qing also gritted his teeth and said, "If Lu Daoyu can really dispel the divine sense seal, then we will not hesitate to help you fellows snatch the longevity grotto heaven." Seeing that they were about to misunderstand, Lu Ping hurriedly waved his hand and said, "I have no way to dispel the divine sense seal planted by the Nine Shen Tower." Seeing the disappointment on Luan Qing and Luan Xiu's faces, he quickly explained, "I am talking about concealment, which can stop the Nine Shen Tower from activating the divine sense seal. However, I am unable to dispel the divine sense seal." Luan Xiu's expression changed slightly, a trace of inquisitiveness in his eyes as he sized up Lu Ping. "You mean you want us to leave with you?" Lu Ping was taken aback. Only then did he realize that he seemed to have overlooked a very important issue. How could these Wood Luan Yarrow cultivators trust that Lu Ping would not imprison them like the Nine Shen Tower did? As Lu Ping was pondering how to gain the trust of these Wood Luan Yarrow cultivators, Luan Xiu suddenly smiled and said, "All right, we will go with you." This time, it was Lu Ping's turn to be surprised. However, Luan Qing said, "Wait, let me test out Lu Daoyu's secret technique first. Let me see if it can truly dispel the divine sense seal." Hearing that, Lu Ping smiled. With a flip of his right palm, the black prison poison fire immediately danced above his palm. Lu Ping extended a finger and a black spark jumped out from the black prison poison fire. Under Lu Ping's guidance, it landed in front of Luan Qing. He said, "Senior only needs to refine this spark and you can use it to dispel the divine sense seal." This was a secret technique that Lu Ping had obtained from the Lu family poison refinement grandmaster's inheritance. One of the few mediums required to use this secret technique was the black prison poison fire. Luan Qing looked at the spark floating in front of him, his expression uncertain. He said, "This is the black prison poison fire?" Lu Ping's expression was calm. He nodded and said, "Yes." Luan Qing looked at Lu Ping, then looked at the spark. In the end, he gritted his teeth and took it into his palm. A ball of green vital energy surged in his palm. A moment later, the spark was refined and disappeared into his palm. Luan Xiu looked at Luan Qing nervously. Suddenly, Luan Qing opened his eyes and smiled. "It really can dispel the divine sense seal." Lu Ping was puzzled. "Why did you believe us so easily? Aren't you afraid that we will imprison you again like the Nine Profound Tower?" Luan Qing smiled bitterly. "At least we have a chance to escape if we go with you. If we stay here, we won't have a chance. Why can't we take a gamble? Even if we lose, can we be in a worse situation than we are now?" Lu Ping nodded and said to Yin Tianchu and the rest behind him, "We don't have much time. Let's empty this place as much as possible." Luan Xiu looked at Lu Ping and said, "All right, let's go gather our people. No one is more familiar with this place than us. This place is one of the most important places. Without us leading the way, it won't be easy to find it." Liu Qianyuan whispered to Lu Ping, "Are we really not going to rob this place? It's such a huge spiritual herb garden." Lu Ping smiled faintly and said, "Although this spirit herb garden is important, what's more important are the 10 wooden luans." Chapter 1335. Luan Xiu led Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu to the back of a mountain within the Longevity Sky Grotto. There was a small manor there. Behind the manor was a mountain path paved with bluestone that led all the way to the top of the mountain. This is the place where the 9 Profound Towers cultivators usually guard. At the end of the bluestone path is the entrance to the Longevity Sky Grotto. When the 9 Profound Towers cultivators enter the Sky Grotto, they will first appear there. Luan Xiu nodded at the two of them before returning to the Sky Grotto. He began assisting Liu Qianyuan, Cyan Fox, and the others in harvesting the spiritual herbs within the Longevity Sky Grotto. Lu Ping opened up the House of Gold at the entrance to the Thieving Heaven Grotto. De Bao, Da Gui, Lu Xiaohai, the amethyst bees and the other 8 wood luans were already plucking and transplanting the spiritual herbs into the Sky Grotto's spiritual herb garden. Due to the lack of time, the plucking and transplanting process could not be done perfectly. Thus, the resulting wastage was very high. Normally, Lu Ping would have felt his heart ache to death. But now, he could not care less about that. Luan Xiu and Luan Qing led Liu Qianyuan and Cyan Hu to several secret places within the Longevity Sky Grotto. Those places were the secret places that the 9 Profound Tower used to grow the most valuable spiritual herbs within the Longevity Sky Grotto. The spiritual herbs inside could all be considered as treasures of heaven and earth. Naturally, the secret spiritual herb gardens were protected by magic arrays and restrictive arrays. If there was enough time, Lu Ping would not have minded breaking the magic arrays and restrictive arrays. At present, however, in order to speed things up, they had to do their best to break the protective arrays. Even if they had to destroy some of the precious spiritual herbs inside the secret spiritual herb gardens, they would not hesitate. Thankfully, Lu Ping had given Liu Qianyuan a few 4-colored and 5-colored talismans that he had crafted himself. If not for that, the resulting damage would have been even more serious. Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu quickly broke the restrictive arrays protecting the Longevity Sky Grotto Heaven's manor. By then, the cultivators guarding the 9 Profound Tower were already standing guard outside the Longevity Sky Grotto Heaven. They would never think that someone could enter the Longevity Sky Grotto Heaven without going through the entrance. Thus, for Lu Ping and the others, the Longevity Sky Grotto Heaven was practically defenseless. Entering the manor to plunder the items inside was just a convenient move. The most important reason for the two of them to come here was to monitor the entrance to the Grotto Heaven space on the hillside outside the manor. With the tacit understanding between Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu, Lu Ping was confident that even if a great late Dharma adept were to barge in through the entrance, they would be able to kill him in one strike. However, at this time, the two of them had managed to reap a bountiful harvest from the manor. There was a considerable amount of fresh spiritual herbs that the 9 Profound Towers cultivators had gathered during the winter. When these spiritual herbs were used to cultivate elixirs, they would need to go through various complicated processes. The spiritual herbs that Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu had harvested were obviously already processed and could be used to cultivate elixirs. Furthermore, a considerable portion of the spiritual herbs were used to cultivate elixirs of the Dharma stage. They were all priceless treasures. Lu Ping also found a large number of tools used to cultivate spiritual herbs in one of the houses. These tools were clearly specially made and had their own uses. Since Lu Ping was not proficient in cultivating spiritual herbs, he simply kept all these tools. When he returned to Zhenling, he would let the cultivators of the sect examine them one by one. Yin Tianchu also found a well-stocked study in the main hall of the manor. It could be said that this study was a collection of all the knowledge, introductions, and detailed cultivation processes of the spiritual herbs since the establishment of the 9 Profound Tower. There were records on jade scrolls and descriptions on paper books. It could be said that this was a collection of all the legacies of the 9 Profound Tower related to the cultivation of spiritual herbs. Lu Ping casually pulled out a 1-inch thick book from one of the bookshelves. The book's title was Detailed Explanation of the Cultivation Process of the Awakening Grass. It recorded everything from the germination of the awakening grass all the way until the spiritual herb matured. Every single detail of the cultivation process was recorded in detail, leaving Lu Ping speechless. Such records could be described as voluminous. Lu Ping could not help but sigh to himself. It was no coincidence that the 9 Profound Tower was able to become one of the 6 great hololands of the cultivation world. After 6 hours, Lu Ping and the others moved through the Longevity Sky Grotto like a swarm of locusts. The Longevity Sky Grotto, which had previously been brimming with vitality, was now in a state of desolation. Lu Ping could already imagine the looks of exasperation on the faces of the cultivators from the 9 Profound Tower when they returned to the Longevity Sky Grotto. Lu Ping himself did not know how far the Nine Profound Tower had progressed. However, he knew that even if two heavenly demons had mysteriously appeared within Mara's army and managed to break into the Nine Profound Tower's encampment, the Nine Profound Tower would still have emerged victorious. The only difference was that the humans, especially the Nine Profound Tower, had suffered far greater losses. After considering it for a moment, Lu Ping placed a voice transmission talisman beside his mouth and said a few words. Next, the voice transmission talisman transformed into a stream of light and flew into the depths of the Longevity Sky Grotto. A moment later, Luan Xiu flew over from the depths of the winter. Lu Ping casually asked, "How is the relocation of the Longevity Sky Grotto going?" Luan Xiu's eyes twitched as he recalled Zhenling's bandit-like behavior. He said, "The Longevity Sky Grotto is so big. We could only pluck and move some of the more important spiritual herb gardens. Even for the sake of speed, the process was extremely crude and simple. We have only completed a third of the Longevity Sky Grotto. And that is because you have a swarm of thousands of amethyst bees under you." Lu Ping knew that the Wood Luan clan was innately close to spiritual herbs. Zhenling's destructive plucking and relocation was clearly not something the Wood Luan clan liked. Lu Ping said helplessly, "There is nothing we can do about it. When we return to the North Sea, we will definitely make the appropriate arrangements in the Longevity Sky Grotto." Luan Xiu sighed and said, "That is the only way. However, I did not expect you to have a spirit demon king under you. If not for her, the 3 spirit demons in the Longevity Sky Grotto would not have left." Spirit demon? Lu Ping was shocked. The spirit demon king that Luan Xiu was talking about was naturally Lu Daohua. Lu Ping had always concealed her identity. He did not expect it to be exposed this time. However, he was overjoyed and asked, "There are spirit demons in the Longevity Sky Grotto?" Luan Xiu said, "That's right. I estimate that there are only 3 spirit demons in the entire 9 mystical tower. Only one of them is a spirit demon king in human form, while the other 2 have complete consciousness. However, they are still unable to leave their original bodies. Their cultivation is only equivalent to the blood condensation realm." "What are their original bodies?" "One spirit demon king is a 10,000-year-old pine tree. The other 2 are spirit demons that have yet to take human form. One is a flower demon, while the other is a psychic grass." Lu Ping's face lit up with joy. Although spirit monsters were rare in the cultivation world, wherever they appeared, they would have a beneficial effect on the plants around them. Just look at how Lu Ping's Golden House's spirit herb garden had been taken care of by Lu Daohua after Luan Yu's departure. Lu Ping knew just how useful spirit monsters were. Lu Daohua's Golden House's spirit herb garden was. In the cultivation world, aside from the Wood Luan, if there was anyone else who was naturally good at cultivating spirit herbs, it would be the spirit yarrow. Moreover, the spirit yarrow itself was an endless treasury. Just by looking at the spirit yarrow peach tree, which would bear a batch of spirit peaches every few decades, and the branches that fell from the spirit yarrow peach tree were all spirit herbs of excellent quality, one could tell how precious the spirit yarrow was. "By the way, Lu Daoyu, do you have any instructions for me this time?" "Indeed, there are some matters that I need to trouble fellow Daoyu with. I wonder if fellow Daoyu has a way to investigate the current situation of the 9 mystical tower without alerting the cultivators of the 9 mystical tower?" Luan Xiu smiled, "That's easy. The old man can just ask them directly. In any case, they don't know that Lu Daoyu and the others have already snuck into the Grotto Heaven. The Wood Luan clan that Luan Xiu and the others belonged to had been cultivating spirit herbs for the 9 mystical tower for generations. Even though they were slaves, the 9 mystical tower's cultivators were not too strict with them because they had a divine sense restriction placed on them. Thus, as the leader of the Wood Luan clan, Luan Xiu could ask some 9 mystical tower cultivators for some information. Luan Xiu sent his divine sense outside the Grotto Heaven's spatial entrance. After a while, his divine sense returned with a grim expression. "The situation outside is not good. The 9 mystical tower has gained the upper hand." Shifan Laozu, who was stationed in the Longevity Grotto Heaven, sent a message saying that the 9 mystical towers crisis has been resolved. The gap in the array has been sealed and the intruders, Mara, will be killed soon. Lu Ping's expression turned serious. There's no time to lose. Immediately gather everyone and return to the thieving heaven grotto heaven's spatial entrance. We will leave the longevity grotto heaven immediately. Luan Xiu nodded and left in a streak of light. Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu laid in ambush outside the manor for a while. When they estimated that everyone had returned to the Golden House, they immediately left the manor. At the entrance of the thieving heaven grotto heaven's spatial entrance, Liu Qianyuan could not conceal his excitement when he saw Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu return. Junior brother Lu, we had a great harvest this time. The 5 spirit herb gardens are filled with 3 to 5,000-year-old spirit herbs. Furthermore, we found 3 high-grade pill furnaces and 3 heavenly spirit fires specially used for pill refinement in the 3 spirit herb garden. Lu Ping was surprised. There are still people refining pills here? Did you find any pill recipes or inheritances? Some rare spirit herbs had to be used in alchemy before they were harvested. Otherwise, the herb's medicinal properties would fade away. Therefore, it wasn't surprising that someone would build an alchemy room in the longevity grotto heaven. However, Lu Ping was more interested in the alchemy room's alchemy recipes and alchemy techniques. Liu Qianyuan handed a storage bag to Lu Ping and said, I knew you would be interested in these. All the jade slips that could be found in the pill refinement rooms are in here. Lu Ping scanned with his divine sense. There were about 40 to 50 jade slips. Lu Ping would definitely have something he needed, thus, he took the storage bag without hesitation. Luan Xiu's expression suddenly changed. He said, let's go. Someone entered the grotto heaven. Lu Ping was shocked and kept the house of gold. Qing Hu used the thieving heaven axe to split open the spatial entrance again, and the group left the thieving heaven cave dwelling through the spatial entrance. In the sky above the Nine Shen mountain, Lu Ping twisted the thin water sword and the space tunnel connecting to the thieving heaven's cave dwelling collapsed. At the same time, it caused the valley they were in to tremble. Lu Ping cast another skill, the Sea of Mulberry Field Scripture, stirring up the underground water in the depths of the Nine Shen mountain. The entire valley was instantly filled with mudslides, and even the Nine Shen Tower's people wouldn't be able to find any clues. Chapter 1336. When Dabao saw Lu Ping's actions, he wailed, No way, boss. You destroyed the thieving heaven grotto mansion just like that. There are still many treasures left behind by the thieving heaven Laozu sect. Lu Ping's face hardened and he scolded with a smile, Enough nonsense. We have already emptied out half of the longevity sky grotto mansion. What is a mere thieving heaven grotto mansion? After keeping Dabao's group and the 10 wooden luans into the Golden House, Lu Ping, Yin Tianchu and the other 2 rushed back to Zhenling's encampment. Looking back, the majority of the evil Luo army outside the 9 mystical tower had already dissipated. It was likely that they had all been sent flying by the 7-feathered fan. Only a few scattered battles were still going on. The gap in the 9 mystical towers' protective formation had already been sealed, and the 9 mystical tower was completely out of danger. However, in this battle, the 9 mystical tower had first fought against the evil Luo army for 10 years, followed by the destruction of the sect-protecting Grand Array. Even though the 9 mystical tower was one of the 6 great holy lands, after this battle, they would definitely suffer a great loss. Even if they could still maintain their dignity as a holy land, they would probably be ranked last amongst the 6 great holy lands. Mara's army that had besieged 9 Profound Tower had completely fled. Within a radius of 25 kilometers from 9 Profound Tower's encampment, only a small number of Mara's army survived the 7 Feather Fan's rampage. However, there were still a high number of Mara's army that had survived the 7 Feather Fan's attack. After these Mara's army scattered, they would surely attack the encampments of the various sects outside 9 Profound Tower. This was the plan that the 13 pure young experts had come up with in the beginning, a plan to wipe out Mara's army. 6 hours had passed and the scattered Mara's army must have begun attacking Zhenling's encampment. However, the 4 of them had yet to make it back in time. Who knew what was going on in Zhenling's army? When they were only 50 kilometers away from the encampment, the sound of a large bell rang out from afar. Lu Ping's expression changed. This bell was clearly Xiong Lu Laozu's vast sea bell. Xiong Lu Laozu had accompanied Zhenling to defend the encampment. However, due to the vast sea bell's special effect on Mara, unless the encampment was in a critical situation, Xiong Lu Laozu would never activate the vast sea bell. The four of them sped up toward the encampment. Lu Ping's divine sense surged toward the encampment like a tidal wave. At the same time, the four of them also took out their mystic treasures and spirit treasures, preparing to launch an assault on the Zhenling sect's encampment from the rear. When the four of them arrived at the encampment, they discovered that the situation in Zhenling was not as bad as they had imagined. Although the defeated Mara's army had gathered in front of Zhenling's encampment, and the number of high-level Maras was considerable as well. Their attack on the encampment was fierce enough, but there were no Asuras among this group of Mara's army. However, Lu Ping and the others soon discovered something unusual. There was a huge battle going on in the sky above the encampment. 4 Jade Maras were working together to attack one person, but they were being suppressed by this person's strength alone. At this moment, it was precisely because this person was suppressing the 4 Jade Maras that the encampment's defense was not in great danger. One person suppressing 4 Jade Maras was something that even an ordinary great cultivator would not be able to do. Apart from Lu Ping, when did such a person appear in Zhenling's encampment? Could it be that Lin Yu Laozu had returned, or Tian Xiong Laozu had rushed here from the North Sea? Just as Yin Tianchu and the others were feeling a little confused, Lu Ping's face suddenly lit up. He laughed loudly and said, "It's Uncle Jiang. Uncle Jiang has passed the second lightning tribulation and has become a great cultivator." Uncle Jiang? Liu Tianyuan and Yin Tianchu were both overjoyed. It was no wonder that one person could suppress 4 Jade Maras' combined strength. It turned out that Jiang Tianlin Laozu had successfully advanced to the late Dharma stage and became Zhenling's second great cultivator. Even Qing Hu, who had followed Lu Ping for such a long time, was very familiar with Zhenling's Dharma adepts. Naturally, she knew what it meant for Zhenling to have another great cultivator. Although Zhenling had the strength of a mid-Dharma adept like Lu Ping, who was more powerful than most late Dharma adepts, Lu Ping was still not a great cultivator. This meant that Zhenling did not have the qualifications to become a large sect. This was especially so after Zhenling lost Tianfan Laozu. Zhenling had taken a huge blow. However, all of this disappeared with Jiang Tianlin Laozu's advancement to the late Dharma stage. Zhenling's strength did not decrease, but instead increased. Now, Zhenling had the qualifications to become a large sect. It was no wonder that Xiong Lu Laozu had dared to ring the sea bell. This was where Zhenling's confidence came from. With a great cultivator at the base and someone who was not a great cultivator but was more powerful than a great cultivator, even if Zhenling revealed the secret of the sea bell to the various sects, what could they do? Lu Ping and the other three charged from the back of the Mara army, destroying everything in their path as if there was no one there. The Mara army, which was already on the verge of being routed, became even more panicked after being attacked by the four of them. Lu Ping charged at the front, displaying the thunderclap sword technique. The area in front of him turned into a field of thunder. Although the thunderclap sword technique was only a great sword technique, its area of effect was extremely large. Coupled with the fact that the thunder technique was a great counter to Mara, it was the most effective technique in a group battle. 3 blood Shuras that were hiding among the Mara army were killed easily by Lu Ping. Qinghu and Liu Tianyuan followed closely behind Lu Ping and charged forward. Yin Tianchu appeared and disappeared mysteriously around the 3 of them. 2 blood Shuras did not even react when he killed them. In the blink of an eye, the 4 of them had disrupted the entire Mara army, and their momentum was unstoppable. Jiang Tianlin Laozu, who was in midair, had also noticed the appearance of Lu Ping and the others. The camp quickly responded to Lu Ping and the others' attack. Tianqin, Tianshan, and Xiong Lu, the 3 mid-Dharma adepts, were the first to charge out of the camp. Each of them had 2 or 3 early Dharma adepts behind them. Zhenling had instantly turned into a counterattack. Lu Ping leaped up and let out a long whistle. The thin water long stream sword turned into 2 sword dragons, which flew towards the 4 Jade Mara that were attacking Jiang Tianlin Laozu in midair. Jiang Qianlin Laozu was not to be outdone. He waved the wood treasure in his hand, and dozens of leaves flew out, cutting one of the jade shuras into pieces. Lu Ping's sword dragon also wrapped around a jade shura from behind. The two sword dragons bit at each other, tearing the jade shura into two pieces. Haha, nephew Lu, I haven't seen you in so many years. You're trying to snatch your battle points from me. That's not very nice of you. Lu Ping laughed. You're late, uncle. What's the use of these battle points? You might as well give them to me to take a share of the seventh patriarch's altar. Jiang Qianlin Laozu had completely suppressed a jade demon as he spoke. He laughed. You're the most outstanding one in our sect this time. Your points on the battle points leaderboard are the best. What do you need these two jade mara for? The two sword dragons turned around in midair and swung their tails. Their bodies suddenly disintegrated, turning into a torrent of swords that rushed towards the other jade demon. Lu Ping laughed. It's always better to be prepared. The two of them joked, but their attacks were not slow. They even seemed to be testing each other. In the blink of an eye, the four jade mara were split up by the two of them. They killed them almost at the same time. However, Jiang Qianlin Laozu's luck was much better than Lu Ping's. After killing the jade demon, he obtained a broken spiritual treasure. Although the spiritual treasure was severely damaged, it was still of high quality. Even if it could not become a spiritual treasure in the future, it could still be used as the best spiritual material to create other spiritual treasures. Although Jiang Qianlin was shocked by Lu Ping's strength, Lu Ping could also feel that Jiang Qianlin Laozu's strength was not weak among the late Dharma adepts. Moreover, Jiang Qianlin Laozu had obviously just advanced to the late Dharma stage not long ago. The aura around him had not completely calmed down. At this time, the cultivation of an official adept would increase rapidly. This meant that Jiang Qianlin Laozu's strength would increase by leaps and bounds in a short period of time. By then, his strength would be considered outstanding among the late Dharma adepts. The two great adepts turned around and killed their way into the Mara army. The Mara, who were attacking Zhenling's camp, could no longer resist Zhenling's counterattack. Once again, they began to flee. The Zhenling adepts took advantage of the situation and gave chase. At this time, the adepts who had the potential to enter the list of battle merits were no longer attacking the ordinary Mara. Instead, they were specifically looking for the high-level Mara that was hidden among the Mara. Among them, Lu Ping was the most efficient. Lu Ping had the cloud sail and the jade phosphorus soul fire to protect his divine will. He also had the support of his eye sorcery. There were very few high-level Mara that could escape his pursuit. Along the way, he killed another jade shura and 3 blood Mara. The Mara fled in all directions. The Zhenling adepts did not go far. It was only when the Mara army was 50 miles away that they turned around and returned to the camp. From afar, Lu Ping saw the Zhenling adepts in the camp. They were all standing in front of the psychic jade tablet in the center of the camp and discussing something excitedly. When they saw Lu Ping's light descending, they all cheered. Ji Xianxian shook his head and sighed. I say, senior brother Lu, can you make the mid-Dharma adepts of the cultivation world feel even more hopeless? All the battle merits lists are competing with each other. The mid-Dharma battle merits list, which was originally thought to be the most competitive, is now only able to fight for second place because of your existence. Do you know what the various sects are saying about you? Lu Ping did not have time to look at his battle merits list. When he heard this, he said casually, what are they talking about? Ji Xianxian shook his head and changed his tone. He seemed to be trying to imitate what the others were saying about Lu Ping. He said, why hasn't this Lu Tianping of the North Sea advanced to the late Dharma stage? What's the meaning of squatting on the mid-Dharma battle merits list? The Zhenling adepts in front of the psychic jade tablet all laughed. They were obviously proud of Lu Ping. Lu Ping smiled and shook his head. He glanced at the psychic jade tablet and saw that it was showing his battle merits, 477 points. Chapter 1337. 477 points. Lu Ping could not help but be stunned. He remembered that before he entered the longevity cave, he had taken a look at the photographic stone. At that time, his battle points had only been slightly more than 400 points. He did not expect that in just a few hours, his battle points would increase by more than 40 points. In fact, even Lu Ping himself did not realize that when he had single-handedly killed an Azura in the midst of Mara's army, his level of practice and strength had once again increased in quantity, as if he had had a sudden epiphany. It was just that this increase in strength came from the foundation that he had accumulated in the past. Under this kind of subtle influence, he had not realized how terrifying his own strength had become. This was also why he was so surprised when he saw that his battle points were so small compared to others. At this time, Yin Tianchu and the other two were already used to it. The second place behind Lu Ping was still Qin Shijun of the Crystal Palace, but his battle points were only 359 points. There was a difference of 118 points between his battle points and Lu Ping's. What kind of concept was 118 points? In terms of Mara's numbers, it meant that Qin Shijun would have to kill 11 Jade Shuras, 1 Bloodshora, and 1 Blood Demon before he could catch up. Even if it were Jade Demons, he would have to kill 7 Jade Demons, 1 Jade Shora, and 1 Bloodshora. In a situation where Mara's army had scattered in all directions and the high-level Mara had died, even if Qin Shijun was the first heir of the Crystal Palace, there was nothing he could do. It was no wonder that when the Zhonling adepts saw Lu Ping's battle points, they were all smiles. This kind of gap could be described as domineering. In a situation where Mara's army had been wiped out, it was almost certain that Lu Ping would be the first in battle points. The battle points ranking of the mid-Dharma adepts could be said to be a direct display of the strength of the third-generation adepts in the entire human world of practice. This battle points ranking could be said to reflect the achievements of the third-generation adepts of each sect, and could also be seen as a preview of the future of each sect for the next 300 to 500 years. However, the battle points ranking, which was supposed to be the most important and the most intense, had caused everyone to fight for second place because of Lu Ping's sudden appearance. In fact, apart from Lu Ping, the battle points ranking of the mid-Dharma adepts was still extremely intense. After Qin Shijun, Yuan Feixiang's battle points had reached 350 points, which was a difference of 9 points. This was a difference of 3 Bloodshuras, and was not enough for Qin Shijun. Truth be told, however, a difference of 9 points was quite a considerable difference among the top 15 cultivators. Even the 4th-ranked Fan Mingjie from Purple Sun Palace was only 7 points away from Yuan Feixiang, a total of 343 points. After Fan Mingjie was Nangong Xiaojian of the Skyward Pavilion, who was ranked 5th with 339 points. Nangong Xiaojian was the Southern Pavilion head of the Skyward Pavilion's 8 pavilion heads, and it was said that among the third generation of the Skyward Pavilion, he was second only to the Eastern Pavilion head. The person in 6th place was somewhat unexpected. The 9 Profound Towers' first origin Hall Lord Wei Zhan was ranked behind Nangong Xiaojian with 327 points. As the number 1 disciple of the 9 Shen Towers' 3rd generation, it was not surprising that Wei Zhan was ranked 6th. Under normal circumstances, his position in the world of practice would be on par with Qin Shijun of the Crystal Palace and Fan Mingjie of the Purple Sun Palace. Not only was being ranked 6th unremarkable, but it was also just an ordinary result. However, do not forget that for the sake of competing for the military merit list, several important heir disciples from the various sects would be assisted by other cultivators from their respective sects. When they were besieging Mo Luo, most of the assisting cultivators would hand over Mo Luo's final attack that would earn them military merit points to the heir disciples competing for the military merit list. Sometimes, the seniors of the sect would even lend a helping hand. For example, the Azura that Qin Shijun had killed had been seriously injured by his seniors from the Crystal Palace, and the first Azura that Lu Ping had killed had been seriously injured by Lin Yu Laozu's sneak attack. However, all this support was of no use to Wei Zhan. As the number 1 direct disciple of the 9 Mystical Tower who was besieged by the evil Luo army, other than him who had snuck out of the 9 Mystical Tower with 8th Sister Zhu, and thus had the qualifications to compete with the cultivators of the other sects for the list of war merits, none of the other cultivators of the 9 Mystical Tower had the qualifications to compete for the list of war merits. Moreover, 8th sister Zhu had been seriously injured because she had infiltrated Mara's army alone to kill a sky demon, so Wei Yizhen was unable to receive any help from the seniors of the sect. Even so, he had relied on his own strength to single-handedly charge all the way to the 6th place on the battle points ranking. There was no need to doubt his cultivation and strength. On the other hand, Cao Jianping, the heir apparent of Heavenly Enigma sect, had slipped down the rankings somewhat. At present, she was ranked 7th. Her battle achievement points were only 313. There was a gap of 14 points between her and the 6th place. Compared to the top few cultivators, this gap was quite considerable. Hua Wuliang of the Wuxing school was ranked 8th with 310 points, and could surpass the number 1 disciple of the Tianxian sect at any time. After the first and second disciples of the Wuxing school, Tu Gaoshan and Mu Changsheng, fell in the hands of Lu Ping, the strength of the disciples of the Wuxing school had declined a lot. It was said that this time, Wuxing school's new disciple of the earth element Juzi had fallen in battle with Mara's army again. It could be said that misfortune never comes alone. As one of the 6 holy lands, the Lingyun Valley was the only disciple to enter the top 10. He was only ranked 9th, and his battle points were only 307. This was not a very good result, but Zhong Zhifei had occupied a green light among the 7 rainbow lights of the Lingyun Valley. Like Wuxing school's Hua Wuliang, he could only be considered the 3rd disciple. Compared to the other disciples of the 6 holy lands who were either 1st or 2nd, he was undoubtedly a notch higher. Therefore, this ranking was justifiable. Although the Lingyun Valley had also sent the sect's forces to help the 9 mystical tower this time, because of the demonic powers of the Endless Mountain, the Lingyun Valley was unable to do much to help the 9 mystical tower. Although they had also sent a pure yang, there were not many great adepts and early and mid-Dharma adepts. Among the other 5 holy lands, the Lingyun Valley had contributed the least. In fact, there was another disciple of the Lingyun Valley who was also on the list. This person was the first disciple of the Lingyun Valley, Purple Light Lu Jichuan. However, when he had arrived, he had missed the majority of the adepts' accumulation in the early stages when the 13 pure yang adepts were plotting against Mara's army. Even so, in the final battle to exterminate Mara, this first disciple of the Lingyun Valley had gained more than 200 battle points in a few days' time. In one fell swoop, he had made it onto the list of mid-Dharma adepts. Although his ranking was low, it was a testament to his strength as the first disciple of the Lingyun Valley. In 10th place was Xie Tianyang, with a total of 300 battle points. After the Xiang Palace's camp had been breached, Xie Tianyang's battle points had dropped due to his injuries. By the time he had returned, his ranking had almost fallen to the 20th place. However, in the final battle over the past few days, Xie Tianyang had also worked hard to catch up. His battle points had soared, and he had finally made it to the top 10. The Xiang Palace had also become the only place among the 6 holy lands to have 2 disciples who had made it to the top 10. In 11th place was Yuan Ku. It had to be said that the Yuan clan's lightning magic had an innate advantage over Mara. Although he did not manage to maintain his position in the top 10, his 291 battle points was enough to show that the Yuan clan had played an important role in Mara's calamity. After Yuan Ku was a fresh face. This person was called Liang Jianfei, and he was ranked 12th with 280 battle points. This person had never appeared in the top 20 before, but after the final battle, he had made it to the top 15. He could be considered a dark horse. However, this person was born in the East Seas Skyrend. It was said that he was highly regarded by Xiao Baiyu, and had even received the inheritance of Xiao Baiyu's heaven-opening sword technique. He was an outstanding talent among the 3 generations of sword cultivators in Skyrend. This dark horse seemed to be reasonable to everyone. After this person, Sima Chongfeng was ranked 13th with 275 battle points, and Shui Jiro was ranked 14th with 272 battle points. Sang Yu was ranked 15th with a difference of 6 points. From the 16th to the 20th place, most of them were familiar faces. They were Su Jin of the Xiang Palace, Cheng Shizhuang of the Crystal Palace, Yu Ziqing of the Charm Pavilion, Yuan Jinglei of the Yuan clan, and Xiaohe Wushang of the Tianxian sect. The difference in battle points between these people was not too big. When it came to Xiahou Wushang, who was ranked 20th, he still had 252 battle points. However, from the 21st place onwards, there was a clear dividing line between the mid-Dharma adepts. The 21st place was a disciple from the Flowing Cloud Pavilion, a large sect in Central Plains. His battle points were only 226, which was 26 points away from Xiahou Wushang, who was ranked 20th. This was not a gap that could be easily made up for. Lu Ping looked further down the list and realized that most of the people on the list were direct adepts from the large sects in Central Plains and overseas. Among them were Chan Yu and Chan Xiong from the Tianyu sect. Yin Tianchu was ranked 36th with 183 points, becoming one of the only two mid-Dharma adepts in Zhenling to enter the 7th Patriarch's altar. What was more regrettable was Qing Hu, whose battle points had reached 138. At this time, she was still 13 points away from the 50th place on the list. However, as a medium-sized sect, it was already impressive enough for two of their third-generation disciples to be on the list of mid-Dharma adepts. Many famous sects in the cultivation world only had two direct adepts on the list, not to mention that Zhenling had Lu Ping, who dominated the mid-Dharma adepts on the list. In this operation to encircle Mara from the 9 Xian Tower, Zhenling could be considered one of the most outstanding sects. However, in reality, Zhenling's gains were far more than that. Chapter 1338. Zhenling naturally did not have high hopes of entering the late Dharma stage, but Zhenling still had hopes of making it to the early Dharma stage. If the mid-Dharma stage battle list attracted everyone's attention because it was fought over by the elites of the third generation of adepts, then the early Dharma stage battle list was chaotic. One of the reasons the early Dharma adepts were messy on the leaderboard was that there were many more early Dharma adepts than mid-Dharma adepts. Another reason was that there was not much of a gap between the early Dharma adepts' abilities. The third reason was that the early Dharma adepts had suffered too many losses in battle. It was possible that the adepts who were on the leaderboard one day would disappear from the leaderboard the next day because they had died or because they were unable to compete for battle credits due to their severe injuries. Therefore, compared to the intense and orderly competition on the battle merit leaderboard for the mid-Dharma stage, the early Dharma stage battle merit leaderboard was much more chaotic. There were even two instances where the cultivator at the top of the early Dharma stage battle merit leaderboard had suddenly disappeared. This meant that these two cultivators had completely fallen. Even the adept who appeared at the top of the list could easily disappear from the list after dying. This showed how chaotic the early Dharma stage battle list was. However, if one took a closer look at the early Dharma stage battle credit rankings, they would still be able to detect a few strong and resilient existences. Although their rankings had been fluctuating up and down, they had never once fallen off the list. More importantly, they had survived in one piece, which was why they had finally managed to secure a spot on the battle credit rankings. Among them were Zhenling's Liu Qianyuan and Tiancheng Laozu. Liu Qianyuan could be considered an ascetic monk, and with the help of Qiankang Laozu's Dharma soul, he was now at the peak of the early Dharma stage, making him an outstanding adept among the adepts of the same level. In addition, during the last period of time, he had teamed up with Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu. With their help, he had gained a lot of battle credits. He had even killed the Jade Shura with Lu Ping's help 2 or 3 times, causing his battle credits to increase rapidly. Now, he was firmly in the 23rd place on the battle list and had secured the right to enter the 7th Patriarch's altar. The other one who had secured the right was Tiancheng Laozu. Tiancheng Laozu's ranking was much higher than Liu Qianyuan's, with 291 points. This was because Tiancheng Laozu had arrived half a month later. Otherwise, it would not have been a problem for him to make it to the top 10. Although Liu Qianyuan had gained a lot of battle credits with the help of Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu, Lu Ping and Yin Tianchu still had to fight for battle credits, so there was still a limit to how much they could help Liu Qianyuan. But Tiancheng Laozu was different. Tiancheng Laozu had used the Mother and Child Core Fire to practice the Inferno Sky Burning Inferno, which allowed Tiancheng Laozu to challenge mid-Dharma adepts at the early Dharma stage. In addition, Tiancheng Laozu had two mid-Dharma adepts by his side, Tianqin and Tianshan, to help him fight for battle credits. Therefore, although Tiancheng Laozu had arrived half a month later than the others, his battle credits kept rising, and he was finally in the 13th place. Other than Liu Qianyuan and Tiancheng Laozu, there was actually another early Dharma adept in Zhenling who had made it to the top of the leaderboard, and that was Lei Di. Strictly speaking, Lei Di was not a Zhenling adept. This time, he had come from the North Sea because he could not forget about Qin Yu and Qin Gang. However, he could not use the name of the Luo Xin sect to compete for the leaderboard, so he had used his identity as a third-generation disciple of Zhenling to receive the photographic stone. Although Lei Di was born in the Luo Xin sect, he had a fortuitous encounter later on. Now, he only had about 10 to 20% of his abilities from the Luo Xin sect. This was also the reason why Lei Di did not have much of a sense of belonging to the Luo Xin sect. Lei Di's abilities were already considered outstanding among the adepts of the same level, and he was not inferior to Liu Qianyuan. With the help of the two brothers, Qin Yu and Qin Gang, as well as Lu Ping's secret instructions, and the early Dharma adepts of Zhenling taking good care of him, Lei Di actually managed to make it to the leaderboard. He was now in the 38th place among the early Dharma adepts, which was a very stable position. Zhenling had two mid-Dharma adepts on the leaderboard, and three early Dharma adepts on the leaderboard. This kind of achievement was enough for Zhenling to attract the attention of the entire world of adepts. However, other than being able to enter the Seventh Patriarch's platform, there was also the fight to enter the three great secret realms. Zhenling's performance was still outstanding. Among the late core forging adepts and the mid-core forging adepts, there was only one late core forging adept who managed to make it to the top 100, and it was a third-generation adept of Zhenling. However, among the mid-core forging adepts, there were four who managed to make it to the top 100, and these four were all fourth-generation disciples of Zhenling. This was especially so when Lu Ping's disciples, Wang Xuanqi and Du Shenluo, both managed to make it to the top 100. Even Lu Ping was a little surprised when he heard about this. To Lu Ping, Wang Xuanqi's inclusion was more or less expected. After all, he was Lu Ping's first disciple, and he was a swordsman who had reached the 6th level of the core forging stage and was about to enter the late core forging stage. Even though he was only a 4th-generation disciple, his abilities were indeed at the peak of the mid-core forging stage. Du Xuanluo's inclusion in the three great secret realms surprised Lu Ping slightly. After all, his cultivation level was slightly lower, and his cultivation was not very good at fighting. In Lu Ping's opinion, Du Xuanluo's advantage came after he entered the Dharma phase. However, he did not expect that Du Xuanluo's excellence was far beyond Lu Ping's expectations. This was a typical disciple who combined talent with hard work. With the joint efforts of Zhenling was still ranked first among all the medium-sized sects. Not only were the core forging disciples qualified to enter the secret realms able to obtain a considerable portion of the cultivation resources, but the sect itself would also receive a portion of the cultivation resources from the disciples who entered the secret realms and the 9 profound towers' own cultivation resources as compensation. Only the top 5 sects of the medium-sized sects were qualified to receive this compensation. Since Zhenling was ranked first, the cultivation resources that they received were naturally the most generous among all the medium-sized sects. 3 days later, 10 pure young cultivators jointly sent a message to the various sects that participated in the Battle of 9 Profound Tower, announcing the end of the Battle of 9 Profound Tower. The Battle of 9 Profound Tower was sealed, and the cultivators on the list were required to rush to the Land of 2 Rivers within 3 days. At that time, the pure young cultivators of each sect, Laozu, would join forces to open the 7th Patriarch's Taoist altar and the 3 secret realms. The 7th Patriarch's Taoist altar. Chapter 1339. The Land of the 2 Rivers referred to the area between the upper reaches of the Yulon River and the Qingming River. It was said that after Jiao Daoren and Peng Daoren fell into this world and formed the source of the Qingming River and the Yulon River, Taoist Hu, Taoist Ape, Luan Daoist, Taoist Gui, and Taoist Chan came to meet the 2 Taoists one after another. The 7 of them finally opened the 7th Patriarch's Taoist altar in the land of the 2 rivers to preach. After receiving the message jointly issued by the 10 Pure Yang experts, Zhenling's camp began to prepare to leave. The 5 Dharma adepts, Lu Ping, Yin Tianchu, Laozu, Liu Chenyuan, and Lei Di, as well as the 5 core forging adepts who were qualified to enter the 3 secret realms, along with Jiang Tianlin and Laozu, rushed to the land of the 2 rivers. The other Zhenling adepts were led by Tianshan Laozu and Tianqin Laozu back to the North Sea. Zhenling's group of nearly 100 people naturally would not return to the North Sea through Yingshan Immortal Academy. Not to mention the fact that the cultivation world would find out about Zhenling's long-distance teleportation formation in Yingshan Immortal Academy. This small teleportation formation would only transport a few people at a time, but it would cost a top-grade spirit stone. This price was enough to make Zhenling's heart ache. This time, Zhenling would first head east, then use the Heavenly Moon Sect and the Carefree Sect's long-distance teleportation formation to return to the East Sea, and then return to the North Sea from the East Sea. Everything else was easy, and the affairs in the camp were quickly settled. However, in the end, when it came to the small water vein that Lu Ping had drawn from the Qingming River, he encountered difficulties. Naturally, the Laozu of Zhenling already knew that Lu Ping possessed a pure yang spiritual treasure. However, at this moment, Tianlin Laozu and the others had no time to be shocked by the earth-shattering things that Lu Ping had done in East Sea and Central Mainland. The few Laozu were now looking at the water vein in the encampment with reluctance. This water vein is equivalent to a small spirit vein, right? Small spiritual vein? Water veins aren't just used as spirit veins. If we find a way to implant this water vein into a river, then the effect it will have on the river will be at least the effect of a medium-sized spirit vein. You mean to think of a way to bring this water vein back to the North Sea? In the Central Mainland, only the Yulon River and the Qingming River run through the entire Central Mainland. After a small part of the water vein is cut off, it can be continuously replenished and restored. As for the other rivers that contain water veins, which one of them can be cut off? Once it is cut off, the entire river will be wasted. At that time, it will cause the wrath of the heavens and the people. There are many rivers on the various islands of the North Sea, but none of them can give birth to water veins. In the past, there was a legend on Filing Island that there was a water vein. How many spiritual herb gardens did Filing sect plant along that river? More importantly, water veins can coexist with spirit veins and complement each other. There are many benefits. In the end, everyone still looked at Lu Ping. Jiang Tianlin asked, "Kid, is there any way to bring this water vein to the North Sea without anyone knowing?" Lu Ping said, "Of course there is a way. After all, it's just a cut of the pure yang spiritual treasure. I still have the Linglong wine cauldron. I can cut off this water vein and bring it back to the North Sea without damaging it at all." Jiang Tianlin Laozu said happily, "That's good." But, Lu Ping hurriedly added, "To completely separate this branch from the Qingming River's water vein, it'll cause a huge commotion. The 9 Mystical Tower and Soaring Sky Pavilion will definitely notice the changes in the Qingming River's water vein. Soaring Sky Pavilion isn't a big deal since it's far away from the Qingming River. If the 9 Mystical Tower intercepts the Soaring Sky Pavilion, not only will I not be able to obtain the water vein, but I'll also be in deep trouble if the pure yang spirit treasure in my possession is exposed." The 2 halves of the spirit treasure scissors were of grave importance. If news of Lu Ping's possession were to leak out, not only the 5 Elements sect and 9 Mystical Tower, but also the 6 Great Saint Lands and even the monster race's almighty figures would all make a move to snatch the spirit treasure. After all, the 2 halves of the spirit treasure was a complete water transformation charm crafted by Daoist Chan himself. Even if such a treasure couldn't compare to the 6 great divine weapons, it was still one of the best treasures in this world. There was no doubt about the value of the pure yang spiritual treasure. Jiang Tianlin looked at the deep well under his feet with some pity. The water vein that Lu Ping had drawn out finally converged in this deep well through the underground river, and finally turned into rich spiritual energy that spewed out from the mouth of the well. Although it was not comparable to a complete medium spirit vein, the function of the water vein was not as simple as transforming spiritual energy. In that case, forget it. No matter what, we can't expose the existence of the pure yang spiritual treasure because of this water vein. Although Patriarch Jiang Tianlin felt that it was a pity, he still spoke resolutely and decisively. The other patriarchs also nodded with regret on their faces. At this time, Lu Ping suddenly thought of something and asked, "Shubwa, do you still have the abundant void mirror with you?" Jiang Tianlin was stunned and said, "Yes, I have it with me." "Why?" The abundant void mirror itself was an extremely powerful magic treasure, but it was also a grotto heaven magic treasure that had condensed 8 space barriers, and it was a magic treasure specially used to build spirit grass gardens. It was one of the best in the whole Zhenling, and even the Jade Cave Grotto could not compare with it. Only the true Spirit Grotto, the fundamental land of inheritance of Zhenling, could surpass this magic treasure. Because of this, the surplus void treasured mirror was confiscated by Tianxiong ancestor soon after it was brought back by ancestor Jiang Tianlin. Although such a treasure was extremely powerful, it was still a heavenly abode magic treasure at the end of the day. With one more place of inheritance, the foundation of the entire sect would be strengthened, and the strength of the entire sect would also rise. However, this time, because of the strong rise of Zhenling in the Battle of the Central Region, the trip to the 3 secret realms would inevitably bring a large number of cultivation resources to Zhenling, and a part of the cultivation resources would inevitably be used to maintain some special effects with the use of spatial magic treasures, so Tianxiong Laozu sent Jiang Tianlin, who had just become a great cultivator, to the central region with the abundant void mirror. Hearing that Jiang Tianlin and Laozu had really brought the abundant void mirror, Lu Ping said with a smile, "Uncle Master, have you forgotten how we obtained this magic treasure in the first place?" Jiang Tianlin said with a smile, "Of course not. When we first obtained this magic treasure, it was in the middle of a lake. This magic treasure is hidden very cleverly. The whole lake is the mirror surface of the mirror, and at the same time, it is also the entrance to the whole magic treasure." "Hey, you mean," Lu Ping said with a smile, "exactly. The design of the magic treasure of the abundant void mirror is very ingenious. Its space can perfectly integrate with this world. This is our chance." Jiang Tianlin clapped his hands and said with a smile, "Indeed, as long as the mirror is integrated into the Qingming River, the connection between this branch and the water vein will be brought into the space of the magic treasure. At that time, we can cut it off, and the sound of the water vein breaking will be reduced to the minimum." Tiancheng Laozu was the most anxious. Hearing that the two of them had a solution, he immediately said, "Then what are we waiting for? Let's cut it now. There's no hurry." Jiang Tianlin waved his hand and said, "Although the magic treasure of the abundant void mirror can reduce the sound of cutting the water vein to the minimum, it will still cause fluctuations in the water vein. Even if the 9 profound tower can't determine the location, they can still find the general direction. When the time comes, they may find this place. What's more, this is our encampment, so we will naturally be the most suspicious. I think we should wait until the matter of the 7th Patriarch's Tao altar is over before we act. At that time, even if the 9 profound tower finds this place, we will have enough reason to get rid of suspicion." Everyone refilled the deep well, hid the branch of the water vein in the underground river, and began to split up. However, just as everyone was about to set off for the land of the 2 rivers, a ray of light fell from the sky. Both Lu Ping and Jiang Tianlin were shocked. A trace of solemnity flashed across Jiang Tianlin's face, but he saw Lu Ping smiling happily and saying, "Senior Lin, you're here." The person who came was naturally Lin Yu Laozu. Jiang Tianlin Laozu did not know the relationship between Zhenling and Lin Yu Laozu, so it was inevitable that he was a little nervous when he saw a pure young cultivator suddenly appear. However, after Lu Ping introduced him, Jiang Tianlin was naturally delighted. Being able to befriend a pure young cultivator would naturally be of great benefit to the current Zhenling, not to mention that Lin Yu Laozu clearly had a special liking for Zhenling. Lin Yu Laozu looked at Jiang Tianlin Laozu and sighed, "It seems that the promotion of your sect to a large sect is just around the corner." Jiang Tianlin smiled and said, "When the time comes, Senior, please do us the honor of attending the ceremony." Lin Yu Laozu smiled and said, Of course, of course." Seeing that the Zhenling cultivators in the station were busy, Lin Yu Laozu asked, "Are you guys going back to the North Sea?" Lu Xiaoyu and the others are going to the land of the two rivers, right? I heard that Zhenling has been in the limelight this time. Did you bring your grotto heaven magic treasure? There are a lot of good things produced in the three secret realms, and some of the treasures are not easy to preserve. If you don't have a grotto heaven magic treasure to transplant them in time, I'm afraid you guys will be wasted before you can return to the North Sea. Lu Ping smiled and said, Senior, don't worry. This time, after Martial Uncle Jiang transcended the Thunder Tribulation, he did not wait to consolidate his cultivation in seclusion and rushed to the central region to receive us. This is for this. Lin Yu Laozu smiled and said, that's good. It just so happens that the old man also wants to go to the land of the river source. Let's go together. Jiang Tianlin and the others naturally had no objection. After saying goodbye to Qianqin and the others, Jiang Tianlin Laozu and Tian Cheng Laozu led Lu Ping, Yin Tianchu, Liu Qianyuan, Lei Di, and 5 other core forging cultivators all the way to the land of the two rivers. Lin Yu Laozu, the pure young cultivator, as well as the two brothers, Qin Yu and Qin Gang, went with them. Lin Yu Laozu said that he wanted to use 2 followers and give them some pointers on their cultivation. The two brothers were naturally very happy. As they flew, Lu Ping was very bored, so he asked Lin Yu Laozu about the details of the final battle in the 9 Profound Tower, especially what happened after the appearance of the 2 Super Mara. At that time, Lu Ping and the others had already sneaked into the Longevity Cave to plunder. Naturally, they did not know what happened in the battle. In particular, the 13 pure young cultivators who wanted to send messages to the various sects had been reduced to 10. Could it be that the 3 missing pure young cultivators had died? Chapter 1340. In the Battle of 9 Mysteries Tower, the human cultivators seemed to have achieved a complete victory. However, the various sects had paid a considerable price overall. Some sects were luckier, while others had clearly suffered a great loss. Before the war began, 13 pure young cultivators took the lead and joined forces with the cultivators of the various sects in the cultivation world to gather at the 9 Mystical Tower. However, 3 pure young cultivators perished in the war, 2 of which were killed by the sneak attack of the 2 transcendent Devil Luo. The Southern Sea itinerant cultivators, Pure Young Patriarch Yu Xiong and Purple Sun Palace's Patriarch Jia Xiuqing, who were battling the heavenly demons, perished on the spot. After that, the 9 Mysteries Tower's sect-protecting formation was broken by Poison Azura. The 2 Super Mara had charged in and killed another pure young cultivator who was trying to seal the gap. Just as 9 Mysteries Tower was about to win, the 9 Mysteries Tower suffered yet another heavy blow. After that, the cultivators of the various sects followed behind Xiao Baiyu and 7 Fans Laozu. Under the pretext of chasing away Mara, they charged into 9 Mysteries Tower's territory. After a fierce battle, the 2 transcendent Mara and Mara horde that had barged into 9 Mysteries Tower were completely annihilated. However, 9 Mysteries Tower had also suffered a great deal of damage. Moreover, this damage did not seem to be caused by Mara alone. After the battle, 8th Sister Zhu returned to the sect. 9 Mysteries Tower then announced that it would seal its mountain for 100 years, leaving only a few third-generation disciples to roam the cultivation world. As a result, only 10 of the 13 pure young cultivators who had advocated the encirclement and annihilation of Mara remained. The news of the 9 Profound Tower sealing itself off for 100 years shocked the entire world of cultivation once again. Sealing itself off for 100 years meant that the 9 Profound Tower would have to give up its position as a holy land for the next 100 years. After 100 years, the 9 Profound Tower would be able to regain some of its strength when it reopened its doors. When that time came, how would the world of cultivation fare? Would they be able to successfully regain their former position? Even Lu Ping found the news unbelievable when he heard it from Lin Yu Laozu. Before 9 Mysteries Tower was besieged by Mara's army, it was said that 8th Sister Zhu and 9th Sister Zhu already had 6 pure young cultivators. After more than a decade of besieging, 2 pure young cultivators had fallen one after another. Including this time, 9 Mysteries Tower had lost half of its 6 pure young cultivators. Although their strength had been greatly reduced, The 3 pure young cultivators were enough to deter all the other restless forces in the cultivation world. At the very least, they should be able to maintain Nine Mysteries Tower's current status as a sacred land. Moreover, Nine Mysteries Tower still had a supremacy expert who could wield the 7-feathered fan. Lu Ping asked Lin Yu Laozu about the doubts in his heart. Lin Yu Laozu seemed to have only a smattering of knowledge about the matter, but he was somewhat reluctant to talk about it. However, Lu Ping guessed that it might have something to do with the supremacy expert of Nine Mysteries Tower. Since Lin Yu Laozu was unwilling to say more, Lu Ping could only suppress the doubts in his heart. Apart from the 3 pure young adepts who had fallen, almost half of the other pure young adepts had suffered serious injuries in the final battle against Mara. Apart from that, it was said that the number of great adepts who had fallen in this battle might have exceeded 20. This was another shocking piece of news. However, to Lu Ping, this did not seem to be a big deal. 3 great adepts had fallen in the battle at the Ziyang Palace's camp, driving Mara's army to launch a sneak attack on the Supreme Shen Sect's camp and killing 2 of the Wind and Rain Dual Whip's great adepts. In addition to the great adepts of the Lu family who had fallen at Lu Ping's hands, Lu Ping had personally experienced the deaths of 6 great adepts. There were so many sects who had participated in the battle at the Nine Mysteries Tower. From this point of view, it seemed that the death of more than 20 great adepts was really not a big deal. As for the number of mid-Dharma adepts and early Dharma adepts who had fallen, there was not much to say. Lu Ping and Zhenling's group, as well as Lin Yu Laozu, took only slightly more than half a day to arrive at the West River. This was an extremely strange area. The entire West River was like a huge basin. However, after the 2 rivers, the Qingming River and the Yulon River, rushed out from the source of the West River, they strangely flowed along the northern and southern edges of the basin. They did not flow towards the lower terrain of the West River. And even though there were 2 large rivers supplying water from the north and south, the entire West River had become a huge desert. The 7th Patriarch's Way altar and the 3 secret zones were also hidden in some empty space in the middle of the desert. By the time Lu Ping and the others arrived at the West River, there were already quite a number of adepts who had already arrived. Lin Yu Laozu gave a few more instructions to the group before disappearing. Brother Lu, you're too late. This time, Brother Lu has outshone all the others on the war merit rankings. We can't do anything about it. Shijun admits defeat. Coincidentally, Qin Shijun was also nearby. When he saw Lu Ping arrive, he immediately laughed and came forward to greet Lu Ping. Naturally, Lu Ping did not believe that the number 1 heir of a holy land would admit defeat to someone else. But as the saying goes, Brother Qin, you flatter me. I was just lucky this time. How can I compare to a direct heir of a holy land like Brother Qin? Besides, as long as you enter the 7th Patriarch's Way altar, there is no difference between 1st and 50th place. Lu Ping looked behind Qin Shijun and saw a person silently walking at the back of the group in the Crystal Palace. He sneered in his heart, but said, "What's more, I heard that Brother Qin took care of quite a number of adepts in this battle, causing their war merit points to increase by quite a bit. If Brother Qin can focus on his own war merit points, I can only hand over the throne of 1st place to you." The 2 of them each had their own thoughts, weighing the truth of the other's words and the difference in their strength. But they still kept smiling on their faces. At this time, Qin Shijun seemed to remember something and said to Lu Ping, "I forgot to introduce to Brother Lu a young talent from the North Sea. This person is also from the famous Xian Ling sect of the North Sea. I wonder if Brother Lu knows him." Qin Shijun turned to greet him, but he heard Lu Ping laugh and say, "Brother Qin, are you talking about Brother Ouyang?" Qin Shijun looked surprised, then laughed and said, "Brother Lu, you really do know him. Brother Ouyang is the leader of the 3rd generation of adepts in Xian Ling sect. This time, he was limited by his early Dharma stage cultivation and was unable to compete with us on the same stage. But Brother Ouyang's strength is undeniable. This time, he still managed to fight his way into the top 50 of the early Dharma stage battle merit list and is qualified to enter the 7th Patriarch's altar. Both of you are from the North Sea, so it's only natural that you get to know each other." Lu Ping glanced at Ouyang Wei Jian, who was standing at the back of the group in the Crystal Palace, and saw that Ouyang Wei Jian was also looking at him. Their eyes met in mid-air, but Ouyang Wei Jian immediately avoided his gaze. Lu Ping chuckled and said, "There's no need for that. My friendship with fellow Daoist Ouyang is much deeper than you can imagine." Just as Lu Ping and Qin Shijun were testing each other, the news of the arrival of the North Sea Water Sword Celestial had already spread among the adepts of the various sects who had come to West River. There were at least 10 divine consciousnesses circling around Lu Ping from different directions, some of them even brazenly trying to provoke Lu Ping. Lu Ping's face darkened, and he snorted coldly. Most of the masters of the divine consciousnesses around him seemed to hear the sound of a bell exploding in their ears, and they were so shocked that their minds were shaken. There were still some cultivators who didn't give up, or who had high self-esteem, who tried to use their divine consciousnesses to fight back. Unexpectedly, before their divine consciousnesses could get within 100 feet of Lu Ping, a layer of green flame suddenly appeared in their divine consciousnesses. The cultivators who recognized this layer of green flame felt their hearts skip a beat, and they hurriedly retreated. However, there were still some reckless and ignorant country bumpkins who didn't believe in the evil and bumped into it, but their divine consciousnesses were directly injured by the green soul fire. At this moment, the divine consciousnesses immediately retreated like frightened rabbits, while Lu Ping's divine consciousnesses swept across a radius of nearly 100 miles in one fell swoop like a flood bursting a dam. In an instant, all those who tried to provoke Lu Ping with their divine consciousnesses were captured by Lu Ping's divine consciousnesses. And at this moment, a few of the cultivators who had suffered under Lu Ping's hands were now pale, their bodies swaying, and the more miserable ones even couldn't help but scream. And at the moment when Lu Ping's divine consciousnesses suddenly erupted, even Qin Shijun, who was standing in front of Lu Ping and chatting with him, was momentarily shocked by Lu Ping's tyrannical divine consciousnesses, and his expression changed. This time, Lu Ping didn't conceal the torrent of his divine consciousnesses. After going through a series of battles, Lu Ping's divine consciousnesses had been honed to the point of being extremely tough. Although he was still one step away from the divine consciousnesses of a true pure yang adept, the unparalleled power that his divine consciousnesses carried when it swept across was already not much different from that of a pure yang adept in the eyes of a great cultivator. For a moment, the cultivators who had been sensed by Lu Ping's divine consciousnesses fell silent. Only now did they realize that the person they had just provoked was a freakishly tyrannical existence. This included the few mid-Dharma adepts of the Crystal Palace behind Qin Shijun. As a cultivator from a medium-sized sect, Lu Ping had firmly suppressed the heirs of all the famous sects and holy lands under the battle merit ranking. He had long known that he had become the target of these people. In front of these people, Lu Ping couldn't back down even the slightest bit. The moment he showed weakness, these people would become even more arrogant and unscrupulous. Lu Ping could only use his most tyrannical methods to frighten all these people and prove the huge gap between them. Only then would these people know how difficult it was to get them to back off. "Ha, which blind person is provoking you again, Brother Lu? Could it be that even now, there is still someone who doubts your cultivation and strength?" In the distance, a few streaks of light glided down. Lu Ping had a smile on his face as he said, "Brother Xie, Brother Su, Brother Sang, you're early." Xie Tianyang laughed and gave way to a 30-year-old cultivator beside him. He said, "Brother Lu, let me introduce you. This is my second senior, Fan Mingjie. Senior Brother Fan has known you for a long time, and this time, he specially asked me to introduce you to him." Chapter 1341. Lu Ping came forward to greet him. Xie Tianyang introduced Purple Sun Palace's second heir, Fan Mingjie, to Lu Ping. After the two exchanged greetings, Lu Ping asked in a deep voice, "Brother Xie, Brother Su, Brother Fan, I heard that your sect's Jiao Shouqing Laozu." Lu Ping had only wanted to express his greetings. After all, the death of a pure yang, Laozu, was an important loss even for a colossus like Purple Sun Palace. Unexpectedly, when the three of them heard Lu Ping mention Jiao Shouqing, their expressions sank. The atmosphere became awkward. Lu Ping thought he had said something wrong and quickly said, "I was too rash." Fan Mingjie waved his hand and said, "Brother Lu, you don't have to be like this. This has nothing to do with you. Martial Granduncle was framed and died." What? This time, it was Lu Ping's turn to be shocked. Framed and died? Who in the cultivation world would dare to offend a colossus like Purple Sun Palace? Yet, Purple Sun Palace was still swallowing their anger. There was no different explanation of Jiao Shouqing Laozu's death in the cultivation world. Seeing Lu Ping's incredulous expression, Xie Tianyang told Lu Ping about Jiao Shouqing Laozu's death. Lu Ping looked at Xie Tianyang in a daze and said, "You're saying that Xiao Baiyu did nothing to save him?" Xie Tianyang was startled too. His expression was rather complicated, as if even he could not figure out the relationship between the two. Fan Mingjie said, "With the grudge between our sect and Xiao Baiyu, when Martial Granduncle was ambushed by Super Mara, Xiao Baiyu just stood by and watched. No matter how angry we were, it was understandable to others. I won't boast about working together in the face of a great enemy, but with Martial Granduncle's strength, there was no way he would have died even if Super Mara ambushed him. The root cause was that when Martial Granduncle was heavily injured by Super Mara, Xiao Baiyu slashed an Azura right in front of Martial Granduncle's escape route. Martial Granduncle's original escape route was suddenly sealed, and Martial Granduncle had no idea how to react, which was why Super Mara took the opportunity to kill him. At this time, Su Jin also said, with Xiao Baiyu's strength at that time, he could definitely do it. However, this kind of thing has no evidence, so Xiao Baiyu can completely deny it. What's more, the grievances and entanglements between our sect and the sky-splitting sword sect will only make others laugh at us even if we tell them. Therefore, we can only swallow this grievance." Lu Ping nodded. He did not know what to say, but when he saw the hatred on the faces of Xie Tianyang and the others, he knew that the grudge between Purple Sun Palace and Skyrend had deepened. Purple Sun Palace had lost two pure young Laozu to Xiao Baiyu. Lu Ping did not think Purple Sun Palace could tolerate such a deep grudge. There was bound to be a fierce battle between the two sides. However, Xiao Baiyu had always done things in an unfathomable manner. He had easily resolved the scheme of the 6 sacred grounds, so Lu Ping could not predict his actions at all. Even though Purple Sun Palace was the most powerful force in this world, Lu Ping did not dare to say that Skyrend would definitely lose. All of this was because of Xiao Baiyu alone. Another few rays of light descended in Lu Ping's direction. Fan Mingjie exclaimed in surprise, then looked at Lu Ping and said, "It's people from Skyward Pavilion. They're most likely here for Brother Lu." Without needing Fan Mingjie to say anything, Lu Ping had already seen Sima Chongfeng in the ray of light. The cultivator with thin eyebrows and small eyes in front of him was most likely Nangong Xiaojian, who was ranked 5th on the battle service leaderboard. As the ray of light descended, the cultivator with thin eyebrows and small eyes from Skyward Pavilion walked over and said with a smile, "Aha, everyone's here. Nangong Xiaojian greets you." Lu Ping smiled and was about to speak when he saw the corners of the eyes of Fan Mingjie and the other Purple Sun Palace cultivators twitching, but they all pretended not to see him. Lu Ping was startled. He looked to the side and saw that Qin Shijun was looking at the sky as if he had not heard Nangong Xiaojian's greeting. Lu Ping now knew that there was a reason for this. When he looked at Sang Yu inquisitively, he saw her yawning loudly. Lu Ping did not understand how Nangong Xiaojian could be so powerful that even the heirs of the various sects were so afraid of him. He then heard Nangong Xiaojian snicker and say, "Isn't this brother Fan of Purple Sun Palace? I heard that another person from your Laozu sect was tricked by Xiao Baiyu." Fan Mingjie snorted coldly and said, "Nangong slut, if you're itching for a beating, I'll be more than happy to loosen your muscles and bones. Let's see if your small sword or my big sword is more powerful. Look at that, look at that." Nangong Xiaojian pointed at Fan Mingjie and swept his gaze across the crowd with an innocent expression on his face. "How can you fall out with me so easily? You're 2 of the 6 divine swords of Purple Sun Palace after all, but your self-restraint is so lacking." Seeing that Fan Mingjie was about to explode, Nangong Xiaojian decisively changed his target and sized up Qin Shijun as if he had just discovered his existence. He said happily, "TSK TSK, look who I've found. Isn't this gentleman Qin of the Crystal Palace?" I heard that you couldn't catch up to Lu Tianping in the final moments of the war credits leaderboard, so you brought along a few early Dharma adepts who might be able to make it to the leaderboard to help them compete for the war credits leaderboard. To outsiders, you gloriously said that you were helping your sect's adepts and had no time to care about the war credits leaderboard. Qin Shijun put on a fake smile and said, I remember when was the last time I sparred with Brother Despicable. It seems that Brother Despicable's cultivation hasn't surpassed Brother Dongfang's in the past few years. Nangong Xiaojian laughed dryly and said, you might not necessarily be stronger than Brother Dongfang. However, Nangong Xiaojian no longer teased Qin Shijun and turned to look at Sang Yu, who was beside Lu Ping. He said in surprise, Advisor Sang, I heard that the girl you like is someone else's fiancé. *TCH, do you want to die? Sang Yu flew into a rage. A blood-red giant crocodile suddenly emerged from the desert beneath everyone's feet. It opened its mouth and roared as Sang Yu cursed. Its sharp teeth gleamed coldly under the sunlight. Nangong Xiaojian was not the only one who was shocked. Qin Shijun, Fan Mingjie, and the others were also shocked. They did not expect Sang Yu to have hidden her natal beast in the desert without anyone noticing. If this was a real battle of life and death, even if this move could not severely injure the opponent, it would at least be able to catch them off guard. Although the others did not notice Sang Yu's move beforehand, Lu Ping had long since sensed it. His expression did not change much, but he somewhat admired Sang Yu for being able to cultivate the beast-taming ability to such a high degree. Nangong Xiaojian let out a strange cry. His figure flickered several times and was already more than 10 feet away. He shouted, Sang Yu, what are you trying to do? Do you want to fight? I'm not afraid of you. But I'm not going to fight you right now. Nangong Xiaojian appeared to be in a panic, but Lu Ping did not see any panic in his eyes. Sang Yu clearly only wanted to scare off the annoying Nangong Xiaojian. She did not want to cause any misunderstandings. Nangong Xiaojian shuddered when he saw that Sang Yu was only putting on an act. However, he did not provoke Sang Yu again. Instead, he swept his gaze across the crowd and finally fixed his eyes on Lu Ping. You must be the Northern Sea Water Sword Immortal, Lu Tianping, whose name has shaken the entire cultivation world. Lu Ping smiled. I dare not call myself a sword immortal. I am Northern Sea Lu Tianping. Nangong Xiaojian's expression suddenly turned solemn. Do you know that you're about to run out of luck? Chapter 1342. Lu Ping finally understood why Qin Shijun, Fan Mingjie, Sang Yu, and the others could not wait to avoid Nangong Xiaojian. This fellow was a despicable person through and through. He had a sharp tongue, but he was strong and knew when to stop. This was also why he was able to come out unscathed after mocking almost all the prominent figures from the various sects. In the end, as expected, this fellow charged at Lu Ping. Do you know that you're going to be in big trouble? Lu Ping did not choose to retort in the end as he looked at the serious fellow before him. Instead, he asked quietly, I'd like to hear the details. Nangong Xiaojian's expression immediately brightened. He cleared his throat and said, the tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. Don't you understand such a simple principle? Besides, you're showing off a little too much. It's not that we're looking down on our own people, but even that Dongfang Yanhong guy would have to concede defeat if he were here. Ask that guy with the surname Fan behind you. If it was that Yang Nanfei from their clan, would he be able to beat you? Yang Nanfei was the first direct disciple of the Purple Sun Palace's third-generation cultivators, and Dongfang Yanhong was also the first direct disciple of the Skyward Pavilion. Neither of them had participated in the Battle of the Nine Mystical Tower. This was also one of the few reasons that many people could use to question Lu Ping's claim of first place. Many people knew that with Lu Ping's strength on the Nine Mystical Tower, it was likely that these people would not be Lu Ping's match even if they were here. However, if they didn't come, the Nine Mystical Tower would still be in doubt. Perhaps they were willing to let the Nine Mystical Tower remain in doubt. What kind of joke was this? Letting a country bumpkin from the North Sea snatch first place for no reason? Who knew how many people were prepared to laugh at these direct disciples of the sacred grounds? This was also the reason why Qin Shijun gave up competing for the list of military merit at the last moment of the battle and began to assist other practitioners in competing for the list of military merit. As the first heir of the Crystal Palace and the only heir of the 6 Holy Lands who participated in the Battle of Nine Shenlu Tower, he didn't want to be pointed at and directly scolded, "Trash. You can't even compare with a bumpkin from the North Sea, let alone the first heir of the Crystal Palace." Nangong Xiaojian looked left and right and said, "It's a miracle that you're still alive." Even though Lu Ping already knew about Nangong Xiaojian's venomous tongue, he still wished he could stab a hole in his body with his sword. However, Nangong Xiaojian had already anticipated this. He had already hidden far behind Sima Chongfeng, avoiding Lu Ping's sharp edge. "Lu Tianping, don't think that I'm being harsh with my words. I don't know how many people in West Riverland have designs on you. Hehe, you better be careful. If you're unlucky, even I don't mind stepping on you." Nangong Xiaojian's words caused Yin Tianchu and the others behind Lu Ping to have ugly expressions. Yin Tianchu's eyes were overflowing with killing intent and his body was about to turn illusory. Unexpectedly, Lu Ping reached out and easily grabbed his arm, then shook his head at him. Xie Tianyang couldn't take it anymore and said angrily, "Nangong Xiaojian, are you done yet? If you don't feel satisfied, how about I play with you for a bit?" Nangong Xiaojian acted as if he hadn't heard Xie Tianyang's words and said, "Sai, let's go. We already know each other. It's not like he has 3 heads and 6 arms. There's nothing to see. Let's go, let's go." Nangong Xiaojian turned around and left as if he had been scared off by Xie Tianyang's provocation. However, everyone present was an elite and naturally wouldn't be so foolish as to think that the second heir of the Skyward Pavilion would be scared off by a few words. Sima Chongfeng, who was 2 steps behind, smiled bitterly at Lu Ping and said, "Brother Lu, I'm really sorry. Senior brother Nangong's personality is just like that. I hope brother Lu won't take it to heart." Lu Ping's expression turned serious as he looked at Nangong Xiaojian's receding figure and said, "No matter what, I still have to thank brother Nangong for the reminder. I will be careful and not give brother Nangong a chance to step on me." In the distance, Nangong Xiaojian's figure paused for a moment before he walked away even faster. A cool breeze blew past, carrying Nangong Xiaojian's curses. He seemed to be regretting his reminder to Lu Ping, causing him to lose a chance to have some fun. After the people from the Skyward Pavilion left, Qin Shijun quickly left with the cultivators from the Crystal Palace. Xie Tianyang raised his eyebrows and said, "Brother Lu, although Nangong Xiaojian's words are a little harsh, they aren't without reason." A cold light flashed across Lu Ping's eyes as he nodded and said, "I know. In fact, someone had already tried to plot against me during the last battle against Mara. However, not only did they not gain any advantage, they even suffered a great loss." Lu Ping suddenly thought of something and smiled. "Speaking of the 7th Patriarch's Tao altar, what do you know about it? Don't tell me that your Purple Sun Palace doesn't know anything about it." Xie Tianyang said, "It's actually not much of a secret. I'm sure that large sects like Brother Sang have clear records of it, so everyone should know about the same thing." Sang Yu nodded with a smile. The 7th Patriarch's Tao altar is a minor thousand world created by the 7th Patriarch during the creation of the heavens. In this world, there are 7 Tao platforms made from 7 gigantic divine chiming rocks. At the beginning of the heavens' creation, the 7th Patriarch passed down 7 heaven-opening inheritances on each of the 7 Tao platforms. This is the origin of the legendary 49 heaven-opening inheritances in the cultivation world. Legend has it that each of the 7 divine chiming rocks on the Tao platforms contains a heaven-opening inheritance. These 49 divine chiming rocks also contain 49 heaven-opening inheritances. Lu Ping subconsciously touched the storage magic tool in his hand. The 2 purple jade slips that recorded the North Sea wave listening technique were inside. Back then, the treasure cauldron of heaven and earth's water ape artifact spirit once said that Lu Ping cultivated the heaven-opening inheritance. Could it be that the North Sea wave listening technique was one of the 7 heaven-opening inheritances passed down by Jiao Daoren? Xie Tianyang continued, after the 7th Patriarch disappeared, the 7th Patriarch's Tao platform was closed. Only cultivators who had gathered 7 bloodlines and cultivated the 7 elemental cultivation methods of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, and ice, and whose cultivation had reached pure yang could reopen the 7th Patriarch's Tao platform. However, after the 7th ancestor disappeared, the 7th ancestor's Tao altar suddenly collapsed. The 49 sacred chiming stones shattered into countless small pieces and scattered across the lesser chiliocosm. As a result, the 49 heaven-opening legacies were completely scattered along with the scattered stones. If we want to reassemble the 49 heaven-opening legacies, it'll only be possible if we can collect all the scattered sacred chiming stones in the lesser chiliocosm. However, this is clearly impossible. Lu Ping frowned and asked, why? Fan Mingjie explained, no one knows how many pieces the divine stone has shattered into, and each piece contains the will of the 7th Patriarch. Even if you can find a piece of divine stone, if you can't suppress the will of the 7th Patriarch, I'm afraid that you won't even know which Tao platform the divine stone originally belonged to. Every time the 7 Patriarchs' Tao altar opens, it only lasts for a year. In such a short period of time, let alone finding a few pieces of rubble, even if you found enough rubble, there wouldn't be enough time to subdue the 7 Patriarchs will contained within the rubble. Lu Ping frowned and said, is it possible to bring the divine chiming rocks out of the minor thousand world by suppressing the will of the heaven opening in the rocks? Everyone was stunned. Su Jin shook his head with a bitter smile and said, no. Before Lu Ping could ask for the reason, Su Jin explained, suppressing the will of the heaven opening in the rocks will at most allow you to know a few words of the inheritance recorded in the rocks. However, suppressing the will of the heaven opening doesn't mean that the will of the heaven opening will disappear. As long as the will of the heaven opening in the rocks doesn't disappear, the rocks can't be taken out of the minor thousand world. Su Jin seemed to have guessed what Lu Ping wanted to do, so he continued to explain, as long as the will of the heaven opening in the rocks exists, it can't be stored in a magic tool. Hearing this, Lu Ping's eyes lit up and said, so, someone brought out the divine chiming rocks from the Tao platform? Fan Mingjie nodded and said, yes, as long as you refine the will of the heaven opening in the rocks, you can take them out of the Tao platform. However, no one knows how to refine them. Even those cultivators who were lucky enough to bring out the divine chiming rocks were confused. It seemed that refining the will was not due to one's strength, but more like the divine chiming rocks recognized its master. Although something like this has happened in the cultivation world before, it has only happened a few times in the past tens of thousands of years. Of course, no one knows if someone has brought out the divine stones but kept it a secret. This is also the reason why it is impossible to gather all 49 types of inheritances from the heaven opening era. Lu Ping had obtained some information from Lin Yu Laozu about the situation in the 7th Patriarch's Tao platform. Fei Tian Laozu's pure yang soul had also left some memories. Combined with what Xie Tianyang and the others had said, Lu Ping had a further understanding of the 7th Patriarch's Tao platform. However, there were still many things that Lu Ping did not understand. Lu Ping was about to ask, but he suddenly saw a dazzling golden light exploding in the sky. One of the golden light was coming in the direction of Lu Ping and the others. When it got close, Lu Ping saw that the golden light was actually emitted from the hands of Jiang Tianlin and Laozu. The golden light was so dazzling that it had even covered the 2 Laozu's escape light. Liu Tianyuan asked curiously, Martial Uncle, this is, Jiang Tianlin and Laozu waved the token in their hands that was emitting a golden light and said, this is the proof of entering the 7th Patriarch's Tao platform. As he said this, he nodded to Xie Tianyang and the others and said, Laozu of your sect has also taken your tokens back. I think you will receive the news soon. As soon as he finished speaking, 2 voice transmission talismans fell into the hands of Fan Mingjie and Sang Yu. After reading the contents of the voice transmission talismans, they quickly said goodbye to Zhenling and the others and left. Jiang Tianlin gave a few golden tokens to Lu Ping and the others. Tian Cheng Laozu also gave a few tokens to Wang Xuanqi and the other core forging stage disciples and said, quickly refine them. The entrance of the 7th Patriarch's Tao platform and the 3 secret realms will soon be opened by those pure yang cultivators. Chapter 1343. The tokens were distributed to Lu Ping, the 5 Dharma adepts, and the 5 core forging cultivators. Lu Ping weighed the token in his hand, and a blue, liquid-like light appeared in his hand. The token quickly melted in the wave-like light, and an imprint appeared on Lu Ping's palm. Lu Ping's divine sense sank into his palm, and he discovered that this imprint was actually a space transfer talisman carved into the cultivator's body. When Lu Ping raised his head to look at the others, Yin Tianchu and the others had also finished refining the space transfer talisman. Jiang Tianlin and Lao Zhu handed a few storage bags and life-saving items to the 5 core forging cultivators. The space transfer talisman given to the core forging cultivators also had a monitoring function. After the cultivator refined it, the talisman would also record the cultivator's harvest in the 3 great secret realms. This was to prevent anyone from hiding anything after leaving the secret realms. Jiang Tianlin then handed 4 jade tokens to Wang Xuanqi and the other 3 mid-core forging cultivators. He said, "These 4 jade tokens are the sect's psychic jade tokens. After entering the secret realms, they will be randomly distributed. The 4 of you can use these psychic jade tokens to gather as soon as possible. Although the cultivation resources in the secret realms are incomparably abundant, there are also many strange and dangerous places. The most dangerous places are the cultivators from the other sects. Only by working together will we be able to obtain the greatest harvest." Jiang Tianlin then looked at the only late core forging cultivator and said, "Martial Nephew Wu, among the late core forging cultivators in our sect, only you have the qualifications to enter the secret realms. The harvest inside is secondary, but the key is to pay attention to your own safety. Cultivation resources are important, but if you die, then there is nothing left." As the only late core forging cultivator among the Zhenling late core forging cultivators to enter the top 100 on the battle merit list, Wu Xianren was clearly out of everyone's expectations in Zhenling. The ordinary-looking Wu Xianren smiled and said, "Don't worry, martial uncle. Disciple knows what to do." Lu Ping thought for a moment and took out a stack of charms and 5 jade bottles from his interspatial mystic tool. He said, "The 3 great mystic realms have always been under the control of the 6 holy lands, so there are bound to be some treasures hidden away by the cultivators who have entered the 3 great mystic realms before. If you find them, feel free to break them. These charms are my practice items in my spare time. Most of them are 3-colored and 4-colored talisman breaking charms. Take them and divide them among yourselves." When the 5 of them heard that these charms were actually the famous restriction-breaking charms, their faces lit up with joy. They carefully took the charms from Lu Ping's hands and distributed 3 to 5 charms to each of them. Then, they carefully put away the charms. Now that Lu Ping specialized in talismans and restriction-breaking talismans, he was already able to successfully create 6-colored restriction-breaking talismans. It was just that he had not mastered the process yet, so his success rate was not particularly high. After distributing a few jade bottles, he said, "In these jade bottles are a few intentional battle elixirs that I have refined. Sealed in them are a few streaks of sword chi that I have trained on a daily basis. At critical moments, they can be used to save your life. I think that there are few early Dharma adepts who can withstand them." Everyone beamed with joy. Nowadays, there were only a few people in the entire cultivation world who didn't know of the North Sea Water Sword Immortal. Although a pill that could seal sword chi sounded extremely strange, the sword chi of the North Sea Water Sword Immortal wasn't something that ordinary people could withstand. 4 core forging cultivators, this was a rare life-saving treasure. Not to mention the few core forging cultivators, even Yin Tianchu and the others were extremely surprised when they heard about the intentional battle pill, a pill that could seal sword chi. This kind of treasure was no less than a talisman weapon made by a Dharma adept. The only difference was that talisman weapons could be used repeatedly, while the intentional battle pill was obviously a one-time consumable. A rumbling sound came from the sky. The palms of the core forging disciples who had refined the space seal suddenly flashed. They rose into the air and flew towards the 3 space tunnels that were slowly opening in the sky. One of them flew towards the space tunnel in the center. It was the only late core forging adept, Wu Xianren. The other 4 mid-core forging 4th-generation disciples flew towards the space tunnel on the left. After a while, all 5 of them disappeared into the tunnel. The 3 space doors in the air also gradually closed, and the sky returned to normal. Lei Di smacked his lips and said, "This Wu Shenren is not bad. It seems that your Zhenling almost lost a talented person." Liu Tianyuan nodded and said, "Yes, Brother Wu has been practicing for a longer time than me. He should be around the same level as Brother Tian Tian. It's just that Brother Wu has always been very low-key, and his speed of practice is not too fast. Very few cultivators of the same generation pay attention to him. I didn't expect his strength to have reached such a level." With only a cultivation level of the 8th stage of the core forging stage, he managed to fight his way into the top 100 among the 9th and peak core forging stage cultivators of the various sects. Among the core forging cultivators that Zhenling sect had sent to Middle-earth, most of the late-stage core forging cultivators were 3rd-generation disciples at the 7th or 8th layer of core forging. Their cultivation speed was slow, and they did not show any amazing talent. In the eyes of the sect, they had basically lost the chance to advance to the Dharma realm. As for those 3rd-generation disciples who had reached the 9th layer of core forging or even the peak of core forging and had a slight chance of advancing to the Dharma realm, most of them did not come to Middle-earth. Only a few battle maniacs or disciples who had no hope of advancing to the Dharma realm came to Middle-earth, hoping to try their luck. However, no one expected that among these disciples who had no hope of advancing to the transcendent stage, there was such an eye-catching disciple. This made Jiang Tianlin and Laozu feel a little emotional. Jiang Tianlin looked at Tian Cheng Laozu and said, "What do you think, junior brother?" Tian Cheng Laozu had taken the Samling Fire Source Elixir, and the injuries in his body had long since healed. At this time, he was glowing, and the aura around him was so strong that he almost couldn't suppress it. He was about to advance to the mid-transcendent stage, but he had been suppressing his own cultivation for this trip to the 7th Patriarch's altar. Tian Cheng Laozu heard this and smiled. "That's good news. This time, when we go back, we have to pay close attention to him. He might be a good seedling in the transcendent stage." Jiang Tianlin nodded and asked Lu Ping, "What do you think?" Lu Ping thought about it and said, "We still have to be careful about the selection of the disciples that the sect will focus on. We may not be able to treat everyone equally, but we can't cut off the disciple's path of advancement and hope at any time, even if it's the disciple with the worst talent and the slowest training." Jiang Tianlin Laozu smiled and nodded. Tian Cheng Laozu spread his hands helplessly and said, "You know, I'm not good at these things." "That's something for the sect leader to consider." A low rumbling sound came from the sky again. Jiang Tianlin Laozu's expression changed, and he said, "The 7th Patriarch's altar has opened. Get ready to enter. You only have 1 year's time." Chapter 1344. This time, in order to open the 7th Patriarch's altar, a total of 10 pure young adepts had gathered to meet the 7 bloodlines and 7 attributes required to open the altar. The moment the spatial passageway opened, a beam of light shone from the sky. The dazzling light was like a sun rising from the west. Then, the light dissipated, and a vast aura of vicissitudes surged out from the gradually expanding passageway, instantly covering the entire world. Although the 7th Patriarch was no longer there, and the 7th Patriarch's altar had collapsed, this lesser chiliocosm was still contaminated with the aura of the 7th Patriarch. Just this moment of leakage was enough to shake the minds of all the adepts in the land of West River, making it difficult for them to control themselves. As the space tunnel gradually expanded, the scene in this lesser chiliocosm was enough for all the adepts in the land of West River to have a glimpse of what was going on. But at this time, Lu Ping looked at the sky full of stars that had appeared behind the tunnel with a face full of shock. Legend had it that outside this world was the boundless Milky Way. However, in this world, Lu Ping could only see a limited number of stars in the night sky, as if there was a hazy layer of fog outside this world that covered it from the outside world. And the lesser chiliocosm where the 7th Patriarch's altar was located did not seem to be obstructed by this layer of fog. Here, one could still see the sky full of stars, and even Lu Ping could see the familiar constellations that came from distant memories that he could not forget. The Dharma dragon seemed to have sensed something the moment the lesser chiliocosm of the altar opened, and immediately flew up from the core space. Lu Ping's expression froze, and the aura around his body surged. The sword of the true spirit, Moli, also flew up and down around the Dharma dragon. Everyone looked at Lu Ping in confusion. Even Jiang Tianlin looked at him in surprise. At this time, the surging aura around Lu Ping actually made him feel pressured, and at this time, Lu Ping's level of practice was impressively approaching the peak of the mid-Dharma stage. In mid-air, 50 streaks of light rose up first. These were the 50 late Dharma adepts on the battle merit list. The area that these people had entered was the area closest to the original location of the 7th Patriarch's altar. This was undoubtedly also the place where, after the altar had been destroyed, the distribution of the sound was the most concentrated, and it was also the most likely opportunity to obtain the original sound of the 7th Patriarch's speech. At the same time, this area was also the area where the will left behind by the 7th Patriarch was the strongest. Late Dharma adepts had almost reached the point where it was difficult to move even an inch. However, this opportunity to personally experience the power of the 7th Patriarch was also a great opportunity for the adepts to improve their level of practice and break through the shackles. Moreover, there was also a rich aura of heaven and earth in this lesser chiliocosm that seemed to be somewhat different from that of this world. After the 50 late Dharma adepts entered the 7th Patriarch's altar, the 10 pure young adepts seemed to have expended a lot of energy to open the altar and needed to recover. After about half an hour, Lu Ping suddenly felt the space seal in his palm start to heat up. When he opened his palm to take a look, the light space seal began to shine, as if it was about to break free from his palm. Lu Ping nodded slightly at Yin Tianchu. Both of them activated the inner yuan in their bodies at the same time, and their bodies immediately rose into the air. The two of them did not use any flying techniques, but they were already heading towards the space tunnel. At the same time, there were also 48 rays of light rising from different directions in the land of West River. At this time, Lu Ping's expression was unusually excited. Under Yin Tianchu's puzzled gaze, Lu Ping stretched out his arms, as if he wanted to embrace the boundless starry sky that was revealed after the space tunnel. To the adepts from various sects who had entered the 7th Patriarch's altar at the same time, this action of Lu Ping was strangely amusing. A mere 7th Patriarch's altar was able to make this person lose his composure. No wonder he came from a small place. Even if he was a genius, his horizons were too narrow. However, what they did not know was that at this time, every part of Lu Ping's body was cheering and trembling. His inner yuan was surging, his blood was surging, his Dharma form was roaring, and his divine sense seemed to be playing out the boundless starry sky. Lu Ping's expression was one of excitement. That was because after hundreds of years, he once again saw something that was infinitely familiar. He opened his arms, wanting to embrace this Milky Way that traversed the entire starry sky. Soaring Dragon Galaxy Technique. From the depths of the 7th Patriarch's altar, a majestic and vast divine sense broke through the layers of obstacles. Before Lu Ping could enter the 7th Patriarch's altar, it had already penetrated his divine sense. What Linhai wave listening technique? What flying spirit treading the sea wave listening technique? What North Sea wave listening technique? What North Sea wave listening technique? The cultivation technique that Lu Ping cultivated was genuine. It was one of the 7 true inheritances of Jiao Daoren, a water attribute cultivation technique, Soaring Dragon Galaxy Technique. In an instant, Lu Ping seemed to see a dignified middle-aged cultivator with a hint of elegance and elegance. This middle-aged cultivator was looking at Lu Ping with a serious expression as he corrected the wrong name of the cultivation technique that he cultivated, word by word. The moment this divine sense entered Lu Ping's divine sense seemed to touch the boundless starry sky. His divine sense was playing out the changes of the starry sky, and at the same time, it was expanding rapidly, as if it wanted to touch the limits of this world and explore the mysteries of this starry sky. With this kind of opportunity, Lu Ping's divine sense easily broke through the shackles of 100 miles, which marked the cultivation of a pure young cultivator's divine sense. 100 miles, 105 miles, 110 miles, 115 miles, Lu Ping's divine sense tried its best to expand, but when it expanded to 120 miles, it seemed to have reached its limit. No matter how hard Lu Ping tried, he could not go any further. Lu Ping felt that he was just one step away from touching the starry sky, but he still could not take this last step. Lu Ping naturally knew that this was actually an illusion. In any case, the boundless starry sky could not be only a few hundred miles away from him. However, this kind of desire to improve his cultivation was no longer as clear as it was now. And at the same time as this divine sense entered Lu Ping's body, Lu Ping's bloodline, which had fused with his inner yuan, seemed to transform into the Milky Way. The surging blood carried the spiritual energy of heaven and earth that had surged out of the spirit world and seeped into Lu Ping's body through the pores all over his body, and gathered in the core space. At the same time, as the spiritual energy and inner yuan around his body repeatedly washed over him, the essence of the white lotus body accommodation elixir, which had been refined by Lu Ping but had not been completely absorbed by his physical body, began to increase the strength of Lu Ping's physical body bit by bit. Lu Ping even had a feeling that his physical body was now strong enough to easily withstand the attacks of the spirit-nurturing treasure. The Dharma dragon flew up and down in the core space, as if it was eager to jump out of the core space and swim in the boundless Milky Way. However, it was still suppressed in the core space by Lu Ping, unable to escape. All it could do was absorb the pure inner yuan that had been gathered in the core space into his body, causing Lu Ping's cultivation to rapidly progress towards the peak of the mid-Dharma stage. When the Sword of True Spirit Mo Li sensed the will, it was as if she had seen a family member. Lu Ping could even feel a deep sense of childlike admiration from her. The Seventh Patriarch's Way altar was such a blessed place. Chapter 1345. Only when he felt the ground beneath his feet did Lu Ping wake up from his previous frenzied state. The moment Lu Ping regained consciousness, he felt an unparalleled pressure pressing down on him. Not only his body, but even his divine sense also felt an oppressive aura. It was an oppressive aura that seemed to look down on everyone from a high and mighty position. Fortunately, the moment Lu Ping entered the mini chiliocosm, both his physical body and divine will experienced an inexplicable leap forward that made him inexplicably excited. These burdens might have caused pressure on other mid-Dharma adepts, but to Lu Ping, it was not a problem at all. Bluish-purple inner yuan seeped out from his skin, and the protective qi around his body was immediately withdrawn. Lu Ping's physical body suddenly felt lighter, and his entire body almost leapt up to touch the distant starry sky. Lu Ping's divine will descended into the core space and merged with the Dharma power of the dragon. A silent roar came from the dragon's mouth, and the pressure from the divine will was no longer a threat to Lu Ping in an instant. Lu Ping looked around, and Yin Tianchu was no longer by his side. The moment he entered the mini chiliocosm, everyone had already been separated. At this time, Lu Ping should have already landed in this mini chiliocosm, slightly further away from the center of the altar ruins. Compared to the other adepts of the same level who had entered the world of the altar, this place should be the closest to the late Dharma adepts, and also the place where the spirit qi of heaven and earth was the densest. At the same time, it was also the place where the broken pieces of the sacred soundstones were relatively more densely distributed. This was probably the insignificant reward that he had received for attaining first place on the battle list. However, this place was also the place where the adepts of the same level faced the greatest pressure from the beginning. If Lu Ping was unable to withstand the double pressure here, he could only retreat. The further he retreated, the less pressure he would feel. However, the distribution of the sacred soundstones would also become more sparse, and the spirit qi of heaven and earth would also become thinner. At the same time, the chances of him being able to hear the true voice of the seventh patriarch were slimmer. Lu Ping's spiritual force instantly spread out, but he soon discovered that Lu Ping could only control a radius of 24 miles. In other words, within the Tao altar's world, Lu Ping's spiritual force was suppressed by 5 times. Even so, despite covering a distance of 12 li, Lu Ping was still able to find a cultivator on the same level as him, 17 li behind him. This was a middle-aged cultivator who appeared to be in his 40s. He was clearly not fully prepared for the double pressure he encountered after descending into the Tao altar world. He took a few steps back and drew a spirit-stabilizing talisman in the air to stabilize his body. At the same time, his hands danced in the air and several more talismans ignited around him. The middle-aged cultivator, who was suffocated by the double pressure, finally stood firm. What a brilliant talisman technique! Wasn't this person Yu Zicheng from the South Sea Talisman Pavilion, who was ranked 18th on the military merit list? Yu Zicheng clearly did not have the same spiritual force cultivation as Lu Ping, so he could not detect that his every move had been captured by someone's spiritual force from 17 li away. Lu Ping thought to himself, this Yu Zicheng is ranked 18th, but he is 17 li away from me. Does this mean that from the first to the last place, the direct distance to the Tao altar ruins is 1 li closer than the last place? A distance of 1 li was nothing to Lu Ping and the others, but it was not easy to move forward under the double pressure of the Tao altar world. Although Lin Yu Laozu had told him to try to move towards the 7 central Tao altar ruins after entering the Tao altar world, Lu Ping still decided to adapt to the surroundings first before moving forward. Lu Ping took 2 steps forward and found a white marble stone plate on his left that was half covered by soil and stones. Lu Ping's heart thumped and he took 2 steps to the left and wiped away the soil and stones covering the stone plate. Only then did he realize that it was a white marble praying mat used for meditation. According to the memories left behind by Patriarch Skysaw, back when Patriarch Skysaw held the Tao discourse, the Tao altar world would be filled with 3,000 cultivators. Each of the 3,000 cultivators would sit on a white marble praying mat. After the Tao altar world collapsed, the 3,000 praying mats were either shattered or buried. Some were even brought out of the Tao altar world and kept by the various sects and clans. Lu Ping did not expect his luck to be so good. He actually found such a complete white marble futon the moment he entered this place. According to Fei Tian Laozu's memory, this stone futon had the effect of communicating with spirit veins, purifying spirit qi, and calming the mind. It could be considered an excellent auxiliary treasure for cultivation. Lu Ping simply sat cross-legged on the stone futon and circulated the quintessential essence in his body. However, he suddenly felt a rich and pure spirit qi surge into his body from the stone futon on his lower left. Lu Ping did not notice it for a moment, and the blood vessels in his body swelled up from the spirit qi, almost stopping the circulation of the quintessential essence in his body. Lu Ping increased the speed at which he circulated the soaring dragon galaxy art, and his quintessential essence circulated along with his blood. For a moment, it was like a raging river, and there was even the sound of rushing water coming from his body. The swelling in his blood vessels instantly disappeared. Lu Ping looked at the white marble futon in surprise, and his eyes gradually turned green and red. Only then did he vaguely discover an extremely intricately carved array formation on the stone futon. This complicated compound array formation was clearly not something that could be found in the world that Lu Ping was in. Although Lu Ping was not proficient in array formations, he had obtained the 9 array formations secretly passed down by Jiao Daoren in the Dark Void Ocean. He knew that the array formations in this world originated from the 9 foundation array formations, and the array formation carved on the white marble futon was clearly not similar to the 9 array formations. This was something that Lu Ping could still detect. Lu Ping calmed himself down and retracted the divine sense that he had previously spread out to a radius of about 5 miles. At the same time, he gathered a portion of his divine sense around his body to protect himself. Only then did he completely calm down and prepare to cultivate. Just as Lu Ping focused all his attention on cultivating, a noisy and irritating noise suddenly surged into Lu Ping's divine sense. It was buzzing, and for a moment, it seemed as if there were thousands of people making a racket beside Lu Ping's ears. Lu Ping seemed to have been prepared for this. He quickly retracted a portion of his divine sense to resist the invasion of this noise. At the same time, he focused all his attention and began to distinguish the noise. Lu Ping let out a long sigh of relief. It did not seem too difficult. He quickly distinguished 7 types of noise from the noise. Although these sounds seemed to be extremely irritating, in reality, They had always been a combination of these 7 sounds. These 7 sounds originated from the sounds that the 7th patriarch had left behind in the sound stone when he had opened the altar. However, as the god stone collapsed and scattered, each piece of stone might contain 1 or 2 intents left behind in the 7th patriarch's speech. All of these god stones would release these intents from time to time in the Tao altar world. When they gathered together, they became as noisy as hawkers in a market. However, these intents that had gathered were all very vague. Even if the cultivators could distinguish the 7 intents that belonged to the 7th patriarch from the chaotic sounds, it was still an extravagant hope for them to hear what each of the intents were saying. After 3 days, Lu Ping still could not clearly distinguish even one of the intents among these vague intents. He could not help but feel a little discouraged. Legend had it that when the opportunity was right, a stone might burst out with an intent for various reasons, suppressing all the noise in one fell swoop and clearly reaching the cultivator's ears. However, Lu Ping was clearly not so lucky. However, even if there was a clear intent that was captured by Lu Ping's divine sense, it was still unknown whether this intent belonged to Jiao Daoren. Even if it was left behind by Jiao Daoren, it was still unknown whether it would be useful for Lu Ping's cultivation, and whether it could really bring about the end of enlightenment. Speaking of which, Lu Ping was already lucky enough. In fact, before he entered the Tao altar world, he had already clearly received an intent. And this enormous intent, which was very likely to come from Jiao Daoren, only pointed out the true origin of his cultivation method to Lu Ping. However, just those few words made Lu Ping fall into an epiphany, and his cultivation increased by leaps and bounds. Even if other cultivators received the enlightenment of the 7th patriarch's incantations, they might not be able to have such a great opportunity as Lu Ping. From this point of view, Lu Ping had already obtained his opportunity before entering the Tao altar world. It seemed that he couldn't hope for too much. After thinking about it, Lu Ping still stopped his cultivation. He turned around and put away the white marble praying mat. After losing the stone praying mat, the spirit vein on the ground that was connected to the stone praying mat began to shrink after releasing a cloud of dense spirit qi. After a moment, the spirit vein that was drawn out of nowhere disappeared from the ground. It seemed that the legend was not false. This white marble praying mat had the function of communicating with the spirit vein of this world in the Tao altar world. According to the legend, as long as the white marble praying mat was placed anywhere in the Tao altar world, after 3 years, a spirit vein could be condensed under the praying mat for the cultivator to cultivate. Of course, this was only limited to the Tao altar world. Obviously, this stone praying mat had a mysterious connection with the Tao altar world. However, Lu Ping would only be in the Tao altar world for a year. Although this stone praying mat was rare, Lu Ping was obviously not willing to give up 1 year of cultivation time in this place, even if there was a pure spirit vein that had already condensed. Lu Ping stood up and continued walking forward. A mile ahead was the area where the great cultivators on the list of battle achievements were. He didn't know if he would encounter any opportunities there. However, even if he didn't, the double pressure there would still be a great help to Lu Ping's cultivation. As for the loss of the spirit qi from the heaven and earth because of the white marble praying mat, Lu Ping touched the storage instrument in his hand. In the Linglong cauldron, there was still more than half of the spirit vein that Wuxing School had opened up from the Qingming River that had not been used. This was the trump card that Lu Ping used to break through the bottleneck of the late Dharma stage. It was also the main reason why Lu Ping did not hesitate to cut off the connection between the white marble praying mat and the spirit vein. He didn't care about the support of the spirit vein, and just as Lu Ping took a step forward, about 10 miles behind Lu Ping, there was a strong wave of spirit qi. Lu Ping's divine will swept across, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. Yu Ziqing had already summoned his Dharma power. Chapter 1346. The second-generation adept of the incantation pavilion was now only 14 to 15 miles away from Lu Ping. Clearly, in the past 3 days, he had advanced 3 to 4 miles under the pressure of the world of the altar. Now that he had summoned his Dharma power, he had probably been lucky enough to hear a mantra left behind by the seventh patriarch. In this way, he could clearly sense the will of the seventh patriarch emanating from the world of the altar. Moreover, it was a mantra left behind by Ape Taoist, who was compatible with his Dharma power bloodline. Moreover, this mantra was like a wake-up call, helping him break through a bottleneck in his practice. In Lu Ping's divine sense, he could sense that Yu Ziqing's avatar ape was expanding rapidly. But not only did the avatar ape not become illusory, it became even more condensed and lifelike. Wisps of pure yang energy surrounded the avatar ape and was constantly being absorbed by it. Just as Lu Ping was about to withdraw his divine consciousness, the ape Dharma power of the ape seemed to have sensed something and roared in Lu Ping's direction. Yu Ziqing's eyes suddenly opened, and a surge of divine consciousness swept in the direction of Lu Ping. However, Lu Ping did not care. This divine consciousness had only extended to 12 miles before it reached its limit. Naturally, it could not detect Lu Ping's presence. However, this was enough to surprise Lu Ping. He remembered that Yu Ziqing had previously used his divine consciousness to observe his surroundings, but under the suppression of the world of the altar, he had only been able to scan a radius of 9 miles. Based on the 5 times the suppression here, the range of his divine consciousness had barely reached the threshold of 50 miles for a late Dharma adept. However, he had not yet broken through to the late Dharma stage, but his divine consciousness had already expanded to cover a radius of 12 miles. This showed that Yu Ziqing had accumulated a lot of experience, but he did not know how he would compare to Uncle Jiang Tianlin after breaking through to the late Dharma stage. All of these pointed to the signs that Yu Ziqing was about to break through to the mid-Dharma stage. Lu Ping could even sense the changes in the weather around him. There were even tribulation clouds slowly gathering. However, this process was not very obvious. Yu Ziqing would need at least 3 to 5 days or even longer before he was fully prepared. Lu Ping turned and headed towards the area where the late Dharma adepts were. The pressure on his body and divine consciousness increased, as if a mountain was pressing down on him. At the same time, Lu Ping's divine consciousness continued to be compressed, and the area it could cover became smaller and smaller. However, Lu Ping still tried his best to spread out his divine consciousness. Other than not wanting to miss out on any opportunities that might appear, Lu Ping also hoped to find the chiming broken stone. Regardless of whether it was the need to forge the vast ocean bell or the request of the Longhuai ancestor, the chiming broken stone was extremely important to Lu Ping, even if the will of the seventh patriarch that was left behind in the stone had completely dissipated. It was a pity that although there were many traces of the seventh patriarch's will left behind by the chiming broken stone in the Tao altar world, it was not easy to find a chiming broken stone. At least, Lu Ping had not found a single one along the way. It was a pity that Lu Ping could not bring Dabao into the Tao altar world. This place could only be entered by Dharma adepts. Even the pure Yang Laozu could only open the Tao altar world. He could not enter it even if he wanted to. It seemed that this mini-world could not accommodate the existence of pure Yang adepts, just like how the world that Lu Ping was in could not accommodate the existence of pure Yang adepts. Dabao was handed over by Lu Ping to Senior Wu Shenren, who had entered the secret realm of the late core forging stage. With Dabao's help, Senior Wu Shenren would definitely gain a lot in the secret realm. At this moment, Lu Ping's divine will suddenly sensed that there was a cultivator cultivating about 7 to 8 miles ahead. Lu Ping became vigilant, but after thinking about it, he did not avoid the cultivator. Instead, he continued walking forward. At this time, Lu Ping had already entered the area where the late Dharma adepts were. The heavy pressure around him made it difficult for Lu Ping to move forward. His divine will had already been compressed by 10 times, and he could only barely detect a distance of less than 12 miles. The cultivator that Lu Ping had discovered earlier must have used some methods to conceal his aura. Therefore, Lu Ping only discovered him when he was only 7 to 8 miles away from the cultivator. However, Lu Ping did not conceal his own aura. After Lu Ping had advanced another mile, Lu Ping's divine will sensed that the cultivator had clearly also discovered Lu Ping's presence. The cultivator had a look of surprise on his face. Obviously, he knew that the person behind him was a mid-Dharma adept. To be able to enter the area where the late Dharma adepts were so quickly meant that he was no ordinary person. However, the cultivator did not pay too much attention to Lu Ping. After the look of surprise flashed across his face, he continued to close his eyes and cultivate. However, after a short while, the cultivator suddenly opened his eyes again and stopped cultivating. There was even a look of hesitation and fear on his face. Although he had discovered traces of Lu Ping earlier, he did not pay much attention to him. However, after cultivating for a while, he suddenly remembered the identity of the mid-Dharma adept he had discovered earlier. Lu Tianping of the North Sea. He was the one who had defeated many cultivators in one-on-one battles. How could he be so unlucky to have encountered such a malefic person? The cultivator sighed inwardly at his bad luck. For a moment, he was hesitating whether he should avoid Lu Ping's path. However, he had finally found an opportunity here, and the altar world did not allow for life-and-death battles. For a moment, the cultivator had the courage to face Lu Ping. However, before he arrived, he shook his wrist, as if hiding something. Lu Ping had already appeared in his line of sight. Seeing Lu Ping's gaze, the cultivator smiled at Lu Ping as a greeting. However, there was a hint of guilt and awkwardness in his expression. Lu Ping glanced at the cultivator and his heart tightened. He guessed that the reason why the cultivator had stopped here to cultivate was because he could not leave. However, Lu Ping was obviously not willing to fight with the cultivator just to find out his reason. Apart from the fact that killing was not allowed in the altar world, those who were able to enter the battle roll among the late Dharma adepts were not weak, although they were not as well deserved as those who were at the mid-Dharma stage. Naturally, Lu Ping would not start a feud with the cultivator for no reason. Lu Ping also expressed his goodwill to the cultivator, then walked past him and continued to walk deeper into the altar world. The cultivator saw that Lu Ping was already more than 10 miles deep into the area where the late Dharma adepts were, but he was still moving as usual. He was impressed. However, when he saw Lu Ping's back disappear before his eyes and when he could not detect Lu Ping's presence with his divine will, he heaved a sigh of relief. With a flick of his wrist, an irregular rock appeared in his palm. At the same time, thick inner yuan surged from his palms and enveloped the rock. The cultivator's expression showed a hint of pain, but the inner yuan in his hands surged even more violently. Lu Ping, who had already walked more than 10 miles away, reached out his hand and made a grasping motion in midair. A small banner appeared in his hand. Lu Ping waved the cloud sail lightly, and suddenly, an auspicious cloud formed around Lu Ping's body. Then, Lu Ping turned around and returned to the place where the cultivator had been training. Based on the cultivator's reaction, Lu Ping had already guessed that the cultivator's divine will could only cover about 7 to 8 miles. Lu Ping's divine will was far superior to his, and with the cloud sail as protection, he could completely monitor the cultivator without the divine will's detection. In order to not let the cultivator discover his presence, Lu Ping did not dare to let his divine will get too close. However, he could still vaguely sense that the cultivator seemed to be refining something. The inner yuan in the cultivator's palm was extremely fluctuating. Lu Ping was slightly surprised. If there was any treasure in the altar world that required a cultivator to be so eager to refine, it would be the musicality godstone. Could it be that the cultivator had found a musicality godstone? Lu Ping's heart was burning. It seemed that the cultivator had obtained the musicality godstone but did not obtain the 7th patriarch's will in it. At this moment, he could only obtain the contents of the heaven-splitting speech by suppressing the 7th patriarch's will in the musicality godstone. The Tao altar world prohibited killing, so Lu Ping could not kill the cultivator to obtain the musicality godstone. After suppressing the greed and killing intent in his heart, Lu Ping helplessly realized that he could only wait. At the same time, he had to hope that the cultivator would not be able to suppress the 7th patriarch's will in the musicality godstone. As long as the cultivator failed and the musicality godstone could not be taken out of the Tao altar world, it would be meaningless for the cultivator to keep the musicality godstone. Perhaps the cultivator would throw the musicality godstone away. Although the cultivator did not have much hope, It was entirely possible that the cultivator would keep the musicality god stone with him until he left the Dao altar world. However, Lu Ping was willing to wait and see. After all, with the distance Lu Ping had traveled, the double pressure here was enough for Lu Ping to cultivate for a period of time. Lu Ping used the cloud sail to conceal his aura. At the same time, he used the magic cloud to conceal his body. After sitting on the white jade futon, the Linglong wine cauldron slowly rose above his head. The half of the Qingming River branch hidden in the wine cauldron by Lu Ping was pulled out by Lu Ping. A pure water spiritual energy fell from the wine cauldron like a waterfall. It immediately formed a dense spiritual energy mist around Lu Ping. This spiritual mist only formed a mist 10 meters in size with Lu Ping as the center. After that, it was imprisoned by an invisible force and did not dissipate in the slightest. Lu Ping cultivated here in the blink of an eye. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. The great cultivator's palms never stopped fluctuating violently. However, the discouraged expression on his face became more and more obvious. Obviously, he had not suppressed the will of the seventh patriarch contained in the musicality god stone. Naturally, he could not obtain the will and records of the seventh patriarch in the musicality god stone. Finally, the great cultivator who had lost his patience fiercely smashed the musicality god stone on the ground. A piece of soil splashed up from the ground and covered the hole that the musicality god stone had revealed. The great cultivator paced back and forth a few steps. He seemed to suppress the anger in his heart and was about to bend down to pick up the musicality god stone. At this moment, the great cultivator's bending action stiffened. He quickly stood up and pretended to look to his left as if nothing had happened. Lu Ping was startled. After a while, he found that there was a ray of light coming towards him from the direction the great cultivator was looking at. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.